Before we get started here, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors that make this show possible each and every week. We start out with an Iowa company, Iowa Smokehouse, supplying your everyday and your game day snacking needs, whether it be their thick and tasty and tender cuts of beef jerky. Maybe you're a fan of their meat sticks or their steak bites. They've got your snacking needs covered, folks, and salsas, barbecue sauces, ketchups, and much more. Tasting is believing. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your total order. And give you a little insider info here, folks. If you spend $50 on an order via Iowa Smokehouse, and this stuff lasts forever if you're buying this cured meat, again, $50 or more on an order, you'll get free shipping. And you'll get that 15% off discount with the code Hawkeyes. Again, that's iowasmokehouse.com. Also sponsoring the show, Brad Van Meter and his team at State Farm in Des Moines. They offer auto, home, renters, business, life insurance, and the like. And Brad tells me that rates have never been this low with auto insurance. They're saving people lots of money. Give him a call and give him a chance to save you lots of money. 515-256-6480. And be sure to let him know that Cory sent you over here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. You can also visit him in his office online at www.bradvanmeter.com or in person at 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. State Farm, the largest auto insurance company in the nation. Brad Van Meter holding the fort down in Des Moines. Okay, we are here, folks. What a day. I don't know where we're going to start, where we're going to end, but we're going to cover a lot of different points, a lot of different items to be considered, talked about this evening. We've got former Iowa coach Don Patterson going to be joining the show very soon. We've got HawkeyeReport.com's own Tom Kakert, who will be joining the show as well. I'm your host, Cory Brada here, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. We're with you for at least the next couple of hours. It usually ends up being more than a couple of hours. But here's how this show works. You can call in, ask a question to myself, Coach Patterson, or if you get in and we have a couple of extra minutes, usually Tom Kakert is in a bit of a rush to get out of the press box at Kinnick, fresh off the Kirk Ferentz presser. We'll try to get you in if you let me know you have a specific question for Tom. The way you can do this, folks, is by calling our number, 515-635-1601, or clicking the link in the description below. You'll see a StreamYard link in the description below this video. I also threw it up in the live chat earlier. That's the easiest way to get in and guarantee you get a spot in line. We only have 2 phone line openings at a time. So basically, if 2 people are on the phone line, you're just going to get you're going to continue to get that ringing signal. You might get a busy tone. I don't know where we have that set up right now. Somebody told me we had elevator music last week on hold, and I didn't even know that. So anyways, the easiest way to call in by StreamYard, but the phone line is also open. Again, 515-635-1601. And a couple of ways to support the program. If you're enjoying this, you've been enjoying it throughout the season, or maybe you enjoy the off-season coverage, whatever the case may be, you can donate to the show, to the cause. There are links to Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. If you want to donate by credit card and you don't have a PayPal account, you can do so by clicking the PayPal link. There's a button for making a one-time credit card payment. If you want to do that, we definitely appreciate it. You can also donate by Super Chat, Super Sticker, Super Thanks, all those things through YouTube. Those are all ways you can support. And of course, by hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, hitting the bell for notifications, and of course, just telling other Hawkeye fans. We know you have a community of Hawkeye fans. We're trying to expand our reach, tell others about the work being done here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and certainly our marquee shows with Coach Don Patterson and Coach Gary Close for Iowa men's basketball. So the Hawkeyes defeating the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 22-0. And this game was 3-0 at halftime. Felt like almost every other game we've seen from Iowa football throughout conference play. And then the second half happened. And I'll give Deacon Hill and this Iowa offense credit. They obviously moved the ball better in that first half. And, had a couple of unfortunate things happen down the field, especially toward the goal line at the end of the first half. A horrendous decision by Deacon Hill that cost him at least 3 points. Could have easily been a pick 6. That would have potentially changed the game. But a bad decision by Deacon Hill and a bad throw in the red zone. Still room for improvement with decision-making from Deacon. But for the most part, he was really good. Certainly his most accurate day from the pocket. And the playbook seemed to be opened up a little bit more. And I'm anxious to get Coach Patterson's thoughts on how they utilize guys like even Zach Ortworth, true freshman Zach Ortworth out of St. Louis. Addison Estringa was also a big part of today's game. In fact, Addison Estringa, the redshirt freshman from Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, he is our RTI Threads player of the game. Yes, I've got my RTI Threads CD3 shirt on, our Cooper DeJean shirt, but Addison Estringa with 8 big receptions for 47 yards. And you may say, well, how can he be the player of the game with his 47 receiving yards? I'll tell you, a lot of really consequential catches for 5, 6, 7 yards, either moving the sticks or putting them in short yardage situations on critical downs. That was Addison Estringa. And they've been through so much as far as injuries are concerned at tight end with Eric All, Luke Lachey, Steven Stilianos was out today. So Addison Estringa and Zach Ortworth, I know Ortworth just had 1 catch, but he's been playing a lot more as a true freshman. It's not easy to play as a tight end, as a young player. And that's another thing I want to talk to former tight ends coach Don Patterson about. I thought Addison was really, really good. And I think it's fair to say he's probably going to be the next great one at Iowa. Zach Ortworth's got a chance at being really good. I still like the young guys. Grant Leaper's on the roster as well. I know Cale Vanderbush is a year in, same class as Addison Estringa, and they've got good prospects coming in 2024. But congratulations to Addison Estringa this evening, our RTI Threads player of the game. All right, we're going to have Coach Don Patterson here in a few minutes, so let's get to a couple of your phone calls before we do that. Iowa Smokehouse sponsoring our phone line this evening. We appreciate Iowa Smokehouse for doing that. And how about this? We've got the one and only Lamansky on camera. Look at Lamansky. How you doing, sir?
How do I sound, Cory? Do I sound okay?
You sound great. You're not on an Android, I assume, because we're having some issues. StreamYard's having some issues with Androids.
Guess what this is?
That is a mini Iowa helmet.
So I can send that to Mark Rogers to help the Hawks, or I can send it to you. So you'll have to text me.
Okay, sounds good. It'll be a little bit smaller than the rest of Mark Rogers' helmets, but maybe he can put it right up in front of like the Michigan helmet or the Ohio State.
So his helmets are full size?
They're not full size. I don't think they're that small, are they? I mean, unless you're just really big. Are you like 7'5"? You're not that big, are you? Yeah, like that's almost like. Am I good? Am my mic clear here? Can you hear me okay, Lamansky? I feel like my mic is cutting in and out. It almost is like palm size, right?
It's a lot better. Whatever you're doing, Cory, it's better.
Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on with my mic. People need to let me know if I'm having issues with the mic. Please let me know. Okay.
So what was going on is we had double sound, but I think we're okay now.
Okay. Lamansky, I know you're happy. I saw your super chat early, which appreciate that. And I'll go ahead and since you're on the line with us. Oh, yeah, Lamansky's taking a swig of whatever's in that mega Bud Light bottle. Miller Light bottle.
In heaven, there is no beer, Cory.
In heaven, there is no beer. Lamansky, no better fans than Hawkeyes. What inspired the comment this evening, sir? Besides the obvious. Besides a dozen false starts against.
I guess my comments tonight would be I just wonder how good.
Lamansky, you're cutting out pretty bad. Can you try that again?
I wonder how good the players could be if they got more time on the field.
You're talking about the offensive players?
I'll call in if you want, because you got a lot of people that want to talk to you. So why don't I call in the phone line, Cory?
Okay, sounds good, Lamansky. You're cutting out pretty bad, but give me a call. Okay, I don't know what was going on with Lamansky. His video and his audio was kind of not. First of all, wasn't synced, so maybe we can get Lamansky to call in. But I do appreciate seeing him on camera, and he's a happy Lamansky this afternoon. And again, the super chat here from Lamansky, I do appreciate that as well. And Scott with the super chat, exciting game for us Ferentz supporters. Deacon Hill no longer a waste. Great to see Kurt get his due after working so hard on player development and calmness. Player development and calmness. I will say that for the most part, Deacon Hill was more composed today. He wasn't perfect. No one's claiming he was perfect. It was a horrendous throw at the end of the first half. Had a couple other decisions I thought were questionable. And he's probably never going to be an NFL quarterback. That's fine. He probably doesn't need to be. He does not need to be for this team to win a lot of games this year. They've already won, 8? They're 8-2 now. And, look, the bottom line is right now the guy's playing. Appears that he's playing with confidence. And as it was brought up during the broadcast, it appears that Iowa has more confidence in him, or at least they've showed to have more confidence in them. And kudos to Brian and Kirk and John Budmeyer, whoever's behind that. I want to ask, man, I got a lot of things to ask Don Patterson. One of the things that's always intrigued me, Don has told the story of one of his teams, and I don't remember which year it was, but Don has historically and humorously told a story about one of his teams at Iowa and about how one of the greatest things they did as a coaching staff was never tell the players that they weren't really that good. Right. And the point is, you're not even ripping the players, but the point is their main goal, especially on game day, was inspiring confidence in their guys, whether they're a walk-on from, Gilbert, Iowa, or, they're a 5-star from Irving, Texas. You show confidence in your guys. And I think that's what we saw. I think that's part of what we saw this evening with Deacon Hill. I think Iowa showed confidence with him at play calling and put him in a position to succeed. And kudos to the coaching staff for doing that. And I made the comment when Brian Ferentz was let go here a couple of weeks ago, when it was announced by interim AD Beth Getz that he was not going to be returning in 2024. Don and I both agreed on this. We both said, we think Brian Ferentz is going to coach as hard as he's ever coached these last 4 weeks because he loves Iowa. And I'm not saying he's just turned the offense into productivity and the offense is all of a sudden good after these years of problems. But today was a good performance by the offense, by Brian Ferentz, by the offensive line. Collectively, they got Caleb Brown involved. They did not play Cooper DeJean. But if they can get guys like Caleb Brown the football, where has Caleb Brown been the first 7-8 games? I don't know. But he played today and played well. Made some big catches, showed his soft hands, and you can see why he was recruited by Ohio State. Now, the ceiling, we've talked about the ceiling in the passing game. It's not anything to ride home about, but This is an offense with weapons if they're properly utilized. And tonight they were. And with this defense is absolutely phenomenal. And I'll say this again. First couple of weeks of the season, we had people calling in, this defense isn't going to be as good as last year. They're going to take a big step back. Well, at the time I said, let's pump the brakes on that. I don't know about that. I know Jack Campbell was great. I know that Seth Benson was really good and Riley Moss was solid. I think this defense is every bit as good as it was last year. And that's kudos to a lot of people. Phil Parker primarily, but also got people like Seth Wallace, Nick Jackson, Jay Higgins. Xavier Wampa has improved as the year went on. We saw Quinn Schulte make a big play in the secondary. I believe we've got Lamansky back on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Lamansky, can you hear me?
I can. I'll shut my sound off. I should be clear now, Cory.
I got you loud and clear now. I was just talking, Lamansky, just about the effort from this defense and 22-0 shutout. You can't wish for a whole lot more. And this goes back to what we've been preaching for the last 2 to 3 years, how the offense does not need to be great. It doesn't even really need to be good. It just needs to be average. And what they did tonight was average. 402 in total yardage. You're going to win a lot of games, almost every game, especially with the schedule. Almost guaranteed to win almost every game but one. Had they had this type of production from game 1 to game 12. So reason to celebrate, Lamansky.
I just want to double or triple down what you and Coach have been talking about. And I just wonder how maybe it's our athletes to prevent other athletes from coming in, but look at the improvement from our QB. Look at our improvement from Brown at wide receiver. When we have injuries, people get on the field. And I am not disappointed, especially at tight end, which might be our deepest. But, and I really want a shout out to Kirk Ferentz before I forget. He tied Bo Schembechler for most wins in the Big Ten Conference. Kirk does it his way. He's much different personality than Hayden Fry, but in his own unique way, even though he's got the wind behind his sails with the West Division. What an accomplishment to tie Bo Schembechler. And as much as we get frustrated with the offense, I just want to shout out Kirk publicly to the chatters and Iowa fans, because, you look around the country and we've got it pretty damn good. The only thing I wonder, Cory, I like your comment, and I just wonder, if Brown got on the field earlier, if some of the other offensive players had got on the field earlier, even our QB who didn't get on the field in Wisconsin, 3 minutes left, the game's in hand. Why not run out another quarterback, even if you're a public relations person? The Iowa fans would go to standing ovation if they handed the ball up 4 times and took the knee with a different QB. And I guess that's my only frustration, is I wonder how much talent is sitting on the bench, and I'll let you comment on that.
I didn't even think about that, to be quite honest, Lamansky. 22-0, and yeah, they were running the clock out. They went for it on 4th down, ran the ball, and then kudos to Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz. And that's a Kirk decision ultimately. They took a knee down there with 40 seconds to go. It was almost the identical scenario to what we had against Western Michigan in September. And I made the comment that I can see why it made some people uncomfortable. Now there's different circumstances now because the contract is no longer important. The contract stipulation is no longer important because it's been confirmed that Brian's not returning. But that knee I thought was really important. And some people are going to say I'm stupid or crazy for saying that. I thought that knee was really important up 22-0. That is the right move in that situation. Now, the question of, putting Labus or Marco Lainez in there at the end. Yeah, you're up 3 scores. That's very much true. They were up 27-0 against Nevada last year and didn't put anybody in, didn't put Padilla in. Didn't remember how bad Petrus was playing at the time. So yeah, I don't get the. I'm guessing that Don Patterson will agree with you when he gets here, but yeah, it would be nice when you're up 3 scores to get a look at your backups, but it would have been a pretty small window there at the end of the game.
Well, let me ask you, Cory, if you were putting in the work like I did in high school, even when I got up mop-up play, I was pleased to be out there. I do the same amount of practice of a lot of people. I think that's big time. And I'd like you to ask Don that question, because that's rewarding people. I've heard coaches talk about the players that mimic the opposing team and how important they are. I really feel strongly about this, and I'd like to know what Don said, because on a previous show I talked about three quarterbacks in his day got on the field, including Chuck Long when he was young. And I think even Lon Olenzak took a snap. It might have been a throw from his punting position where they went for it. But I can't, conservatism has helped the coaching staff. But, man, let's motivate some players and reward them for practice. I feel pretty strongly about it. Please ask Coach that. Appreciate your coverage. You got a lot of people that want to talk to you. This is a great, great win. I have more respect for Schiano and Rutgers this year than ever. And I think to perform that well in the three phases against Rutgers, with Schiano having his best year ever, he's pretty highly thought of. This might be our toughest game of the year. And I'll listen to your comments on this and then hang up, Cory.
Well, I see some comments here in the chat about, Xander says Kirk Ferentz should be coach of the year. I don't know about that. I think that's maybe jumping the gun a little bit. We can have that discussion, I guess, another day. And then when the season's over, I don't know what the Big Ten race would be like right now. It'd probably be, with the Jim Harbaugh controversy, it probably would have been Jim Harbaugh had the controversy not occurred. Ryan Day's offense has not looked very good, and he's an offensive guy. And, Penn State, James Franklin, once again, can't beat the two big boys in the East. So, and then you look at the other teams in the West, everybody else seems to kind of be falling off a cliff right now. Maryland's fallen off. So, maybe I've talked myself into making Kirk coach of the year in the Big Ten. But probably between him and Ryan Day, I'm trying to think of who else there would be. Maybe if Nebraska gets to bowl eligibility, they give it to what's his face, Matt Rule. But I couldn't be happier for Kirk. I know he's emotional. There's a lot of reason why he's emotional, I'm sure. I know he was emotional last week when he took the field with Brian against Northwestern. Right now, what they need to focus on, like Deacon Hill said after the game, they need to focus on Illinois. They've got a share of the West title locked up, but they're not guaranteed to go to Indy. They need to win these last two games. Both of these teams in front of them are extremely beatable. Illinois won today, but struggled against Indiana, took overtime to beat the Hoosiers. Nebraska lost to Maryland, and Nebraska's offense is a mess. Iowa should win the last 2 weeks, and if the offense plays like it did tonight, that's a big if, but if they play like they did tonight, take a really long pause before I say this, I believe they can at least compete against whoever the other team is. It's not going to be Penn State. It's going to be either Michigan or Ohio State. Now, what does compete look like from a score perspective? I don't know. I'm not about to predict it because I don't know. And this is one game. Let's remember that. This is one game. Deacon Hill has been really poor, all right, in a lot of different areas up until this game. So this is great, fabulous, but I flash back to what happened in 2017. Iowa has this amazing performance offensively against Ohio State where they put up like 55. The next week, what happened? Nate Stanley throws for like 40 yards and they get shut out. Well, the offense gets shut out, I should say. That was the Josh Jackson 2-pick-6 game. So, not to be Debbie Downer, but I need a bigger sample size. But back to your point, Lamansky, very happy for Kirk, and I'm happy for Brian. And as I said 2 weeks ago, I hope they win every game, and I hope Brian's offense looks really good, and he can go get another job somewhere with that on his resume.
I thought the same thing about Brian. I hope he finishes the season strong and get another job. I don't wish him ill will at some other institution. Did you catch the Penn State game at the end of the first half?
I did not.
Yeah, I thought who's your one of your least favorite coaches in the Big Ten? Your bottom two.
Well, I don't like Franklin. I don't like Franklin or Harbaugh right now.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning Franklin. At the end of the first half, he's chasing points. He goes for 2 instead of being down by 7, and going into the half, he's down by 8. And that factors into the rest of the second half. And Franklin always has to be the smartest man in the room. And I like Kirk, how he talks in public. I have never, ever caught Kirk acting like he's the smartest man in the room ever.
I agree. And
that's class for the Iowa program. And the kneel down at the end of the game, that's class and respect for your other Big Ten opponents. And I don't, Harbaugh is, what do you call it? He's entertainment. But I guess what's going on this year, I'm sure glad we've got the coaching staff and the program that we got, because it even gives the narrative of the Big Ten something bad nationwide. And we've had some smart remarks by Michigan in the podcast. And don't let the trolls ruin our party, Hawkeyes.
Well, Lamansky, I appreciate your call, and feel free to call in later if you want with Coach Patterson. But I'll definitely pass some of these comments along. Thank you, sir. All right, a couple more super chats to get to. Bill with the super chat. Appreciate this, Bill. Thank you. If Minnesota loses to Ohio State, the only team that can still win the Big Ten West are Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa. Illinois. How can Illinois still be in the race? That's incredible. By the way, who is that guy playing quarterback for Iowa? Appreciate that super chat, Bill. And I do have the official box score. Also, James Rowden, thank you for the donation. I have this correct. Yeah, James is donated via, I believe, Venmo. Thank you for that, James. He says, how about them Hawks? Appreciate your analysis, and I appreciate your donation, James. Thank you for being a part of it. And again, thank you to Bill. We're going to get the official box score up here in a second. I ran through a couple of these numbers earlier. We can go ahead and do that while we're waiting for our team, Tom Kakert, and of course, Coach Don Patterson to get here. I mentioned Addison Estringa. He played really, really well. But how about this? Deacon Hill on the day, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. And I don't have his completion percentage. Let me find that. I believe he was 20 of 31. So that's like, what, 65%? 65%? Those are winning numbers against a good Rutgers defense. Winning numbers against a good Rutgers defense. So I'm anxious to get an offensive mind's perspective on this. Coach Patterson and his expertise is going to be invaluable this evening. And of course, he hasn't been able to watch the tape back. There's going to be some instant reaction from him as well, but I'll be anxious to get that. Total yardage. How about this? We're used to seeing this sort of reversed. If anybody had wondered heading into this game, if you had been told somebody's going to eclipse 400 yards, even though Rutgers' offense is not very good, if you were told somebody's going to eclipse 400 yards and the other team's going to fail to reach 150 yards, would you have expected Iowa to be the team on top? I certainly would not have. I don't know that many people. I would guess if we polled people, maybe hindsight's 20/20, so people aren't going to be real honest with this. But I would guess almost 80% of fans would have said, "Yeah, if anything, it's Rutgers probably doing that." All right, let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and I want to make sure we have. Okay, I think we've got Alex with us. Alex, how are you?
Good. Any echo on your end? I'm good on my end.
No echo on your end. You've got some notes to share, don't you?
I always have notes.
Okay, starting on your notes, I got to jump up and make a correction with my equipment. I'll be right back. Go ahead with your notes and observations. I'm listening to you.
Okay. No. Well, the first thing I want to say, obviously before any game notes, I wanted to say would be, obviously today is Veterans Day. So I want to, give a shout out to all the veterans, anyone who's watching. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without your service and sacrifice. So I just want to show my appreciation for all the veterans who have served or, maybe who are still serving as well. So just wanted to say thank you for that. So that was kind of the first note. Obviously, I want to hit that because that's the most important thing. Shouting out those people who sacrifice parts of their lives to let us enjoy what we enjoy, which is Iowa football. Shout out to the crowd. I think it was 5 or 6 false starts for Rutgers. So Iowa in November, Iowa's an extremely tough place to play. I think we obviously proved that tonight. Shout out to the defense. It's a shutout, first shutout since 2021, I believe, against Northwestern. So again, shout out to the defense playing really well. Phil Parker. 0 penalties too by Iowa. No penalties on the game. So Iowa, continues. This was a damn near perfect game by Iowa, both on every side of the ball. Special teams did really well. Granted, one missed field goal, and then one interception by Deacon Hill. So great. So a pretty near perfect game by Iowa all around. Oh, I did write this down. You were talking about Coach of the Year, Northwestern head coach. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, just because of where that program was at before the season started, and now they wallop Wisconsin. They have a chance to make a bowl, where I think their preseason win total was 2.5, 3.5, something like that. Now they're flirting on the edge of bowl eligibility. So,
and next question, I know this is an Iowa show, but my next question would obviously be, you've got to be looking at that interim coach potentially for, permanent residency there in Evanston, because what a coaching job that has been. I don't even know the guy's name. You don't remember the guy's name?
No, David Braun. That's the guy's name. Braun. Yeah. Okay. So, and then I believe Minnesota lost, which is something you didn't touch. I don't know if you mentioned that when talking to Lamansky there, but so Iowa now has a share of the Big Ten West title. And I believe so. And they said this on the post game, was that Iowa just needs to win either Illinois or Nebraska, and they punched their ticket to Indy. But I believe if Minnesota loses, and this is something you can ask Tom, he might know this. If Minnesota loses to Ohio State or Wisconsin, I think Iowa's automatically in, because then Iowa could be, Iowa loses both games, Wisconsin wins both games, Iowa and Wisconsin are tied, but since Iowa has the win against Wisconsin, Iowa would go. I think that's how it worked out. And that'd be a good question for Tom. Just, obviously Iowa just needs to win one more.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I haven't. I'll just say this: the division is a mess right now. It's as bad as it's ever been. The fact that I don't even know what the record is, East versus West, and it's always been lopsided, but my guess is it's, again, as bad as it's ever been. And if you're Iowa, they got a shot now. They're going to be going into, assuming they can win these next two games, which is not a guarantee. They're going to go into Indy with no expectation to win, no pressure at all, less pressure than they had in 2021. That's house money. That's Brian Ferentz's last chance to show something against a major team, because they probably will he'll play somebody good in a bowl game, but they may be a team that has lost a lot of people for early entry to the draft. And that is going to be an interesting game. Now, maybe Iowa lays an egg and they, get beat 42-3 again. That's possible. But I'll just be anxious to see how Brian calls that game, assuming they win.
Now, a question for you. Did you hear, obviously USC fired their defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch, after the Washington game. And I saw some reports of Phil Parker potentially going to USC, or at least that was a name that was thrown out there. Personally, I don't think he'll go. He's an older.
He's not going to USC.
No. I saw that and I go, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's kind of scary that his name got thrown out there, but I don't think he'll go. He's no spring chicken. I don't think he'll leave Iowa because, I don't think he's too much behind Kirk. Whenever Kirk retires, I think Phil will follow shortly after. And going out to LA, he doesn't seem like an LA guy. And it's like, you have to be good to be in that spotlight. And if you're kind of average to mediocre, they'll give you 2 shots and then you're gone. So, but I found that interesting.
I don't think I'm not like I have inside information on this, but I don't think my guess is that Phil Parker's not interested in,
moving
his family to LA and at 60 is he 60 years old?
Something like that. Yeah, I did not think it would be a shot, but then another person was Jim Leonard, who's just an analyst for, I think, Illinois. I think he's the best candidate for that one. So,
well, and here's the other thing. Phil Parker's name should be brought up with all those jobs. It should be.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just because the name gets brought up doesn't mean anything.
No.
I will say this. USC would be foolish not to call Phil Parker and to pursue.
Make him say no.
If he's interested in being a DC somewhere, I would think if there's anything left on the docket for Phil Parker, it's, hey, I'll wait around until Kirk retires and I'll take the reins as a head coach. I don't know. It would be hard for me to imagine a scenario where Phil Parker's like, well, what do I have left to do? oh, I know, I'll be a DC at USC with all the smoke out there and move to LA at age 60 and be under scrutiny more than ever before. I don't know what he'd probably be making double what he's making here, but cost of living in California is a lot. I mean, apples to oranges compared to Iowa. I mean, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, but I seriously doubt that ever happens.
No, I just found it interesting that I saw his name like in top 5 like candidates for DC at USC. I can't remember. It was a athlon maybe or something, one of those sports like sports magazines. I saw that there, and I just found it interesting. But I'm like you. I don't think he'll leave. Really, just for me, just not a lot of notes on the game because, like I said, it was a near perfect game. I think Caleb Brown had a bit of a coming out party. I think he chipped away at trying to get his playing time, and it was. I saw a Twitter update from David Eichel. He was at the stand. He said he was pretty emotional after that touchdown. Said it didn't really hit him till he got to the sidelines. So I'm happy for him. Welcome to Iowa, young buck. I hope we see more great things out of him. He kind of proved that once he gets the ball in his hands, like, hey, I'm going to get I'm going to make the most of it. He's like, maybe not to the level of Cooper DeJean, but man, it feels like he has that drive to like, if I get the ball in my hands, I'm going to make it really count. So that touchdown he caught was, he fought for that touchdown. He didn't walk in. He got hit a couple times and kept his feet. So I think he kind of proved like, hey, I'm a gamer. I want the ball. I can do some good things if I have the ball in my hands. Speaking of the offense too, I saw this stat: 0 3 and outs. Iowa had not had a single 3 and out the entire game, which I thought was pretty impressive. So,
yeah, somebody brought that to my attention, and I almost didn't believe him at first. When's the last time we could say that? The first time that Iowa has eclipsed 400 yards since I think October 1st, 2021. But when's the last time they win an entire game without a single offensive 3 and out? That's probably equally as hard to come by. And so that's what this offense needs to do. We've talked ad nauseum about the fact that this defense is so good in spite of the fact that they're always on the field. And, we had the crazy example of that was the Penn State game earlier this year where Penn State snapped it like 97, 98 times or something insane.
97 plays. The defense was on the field for just over 45 minutes. So essentially 3/4 of the game.
You want to guess how many offensive plays were snapped by Rutgers today? I'll tell you.
Let me guess. So at the time of possession, I know Iowa had the lead on that. I think it was like 38 for Iowa or somewhere around there. Because snaps by Rutgers, I will say 43.
All right, great guess. 41. 41 snaps for Rutgers. And let's see, Iowa had
probably 60.
77.
Oh. Wow.
77.
Offensive explosion.
Yeah. So really impressive. Again, really impressive. I'm going to curb my enthusiasm. In the words of Larry David, I'm going to curb my enthusiasm simply because this is a one game. And it seems like a pretty massive outlier. But reason to celebrate today against a good defense. No question about it.
Well, I've heard the phrase do it once it's luck, do it twice it's skill. So hopefully and then the last two things, and that kind of touch on what I just said. So Rutgers, it seemed like they targeted Jamari Harris a lot, number 27. And this is not a shot at him, but I think he is our weakest defensive back. Obviously, we have Cooper DeJean, Quinn Schulte, but I think he kind of showed up and played really well. I think Northwestern targeted Jamari Harris as well. I think Rutgers saw that. Obviously, they didn't want to go at Cooper too much. And just saying he's the weakest defensive back is not like saying he's bad. It's just when you compare him to who we have on the field for defensive backs, it's just you're among great company. I mean, it's just, again, I think he's a good cornerback, a good college cornerback.
Well, typically your best skill position, typical teams, right? Your fastest, best skill position players are going to be on the outside. So they're either going to be matched up with Cooper DeJean and Jamari Harris. So what you just said is absolutely right. I mean, if you have the choice, the lesser of two evils, you're going to go toward Jamari Harris. But I'm with you. I think he's played really well. I know he gave up one touchdown last week, but there's not really a weak link right now with this defense.
No. And then kind of comparing that with Iowa's next game with Illinois. Illinois is very similar to Rutgers, where is that and I didn't bring this up last week, and the only thing I mentioned last week was I was a little concerned about this game because I thought Rutgers could move the ball with Gavin Wimsatt with his feet, and they didn't run him too much, which was surprising. But Illinois, I think, is a kind of the lesser of Rutgers, where they have a mobile quarterback. I don't know if I can't think of his name, is going to be back, but that Paddock looked pretty good. But they're weak specifically on the defense. They're weak on the outside, which is where Rutgers has the weakest, and Iowa was able to exploit that. So I think if Iowa's going to have a similar type game to Rutgers, they need to exploit those cornerbacks. Obviously, Illinois got probably a first round pick in Johnny Newton on that defensive line. So if Iowa, the protection was really good today. I don't think outside of that bad snap, I don't think Iowa gave up maybe 2 sacks, 1 sack, if you count that fumble when Iowa was down near the goal line. So if Iowa can protect Deacon, I think I'm not too worried about Illinois, but it's at Kinnick. So
I'm not really worried about Illinois. Here's what I'll say, and don't feed this to the players, but I'm not really worried about Illinois anyways, because this team has been winning games without an offense. The offense was solid today, not great. They were solid. They got 400 total yards. Deacon Hill's numbers were good, not great. No touchdowns, 1 pick. The run game averaged around 4 yards a carry, which is the mark that you kind of set, the low bar. So, I don't know, man. I know I'm going to be given this aura of overconfidence, but we all said even after after Cade went down against, what was that, Michigan State?
Michigan State.
Hey, as long as Deacon Hill doesn't throw a bunch of pick sixes, they're going to win probably every game, or at least close to every game remaining in the schedule. They should have won the Minnesota game. We won't rehash that. I'm sure we'll have time to do that moving forward. But you could look at them right now and say, hey, they should be, 9-1.
Yeah.
And so that's why, even if the offense takes this is what's crazy. Even if the offense goes back to what it looked like a week ago, Alex, which, to be quite honest, this is going to anger some people. I think there's a better chance that happens than we get a duplication of what we saw today. So,
yeah, I don't think they'll do what they did tonight, but if they get just maybe a touch under 300, I still think it's, for what we've seen, it's still pretty decent. But that's really the last note I had. Obviously, going to enjoy the win tonight. I think Iowa did a lot of things right. Hopefully they can build off of that. I think Illinois will be, with Johnny Newton on that defensive line, that's the one player they have to watch out for. They have some good wide receivers, Isaiah Williams, Pat Bryant. I can't think of their tight end off the top of my head. Casey Washington's another good wide receiver for them. So I think the defensive backs will have some work cut out for them, but Illinois' offensive line has not done very well, not as bad as Purdue's, but I think Iowa, I'm fairly confident going into that Illinois game. Kind of curious to see what the game total was. For all you sickos out there, the under did hit. So, but that's the last I'll say. The only thing I asked Tom about how the West would shake up. What's the quote unquote scenarios for Iowa to clinch the West? Obviously, a win is the easiest path, either against Illinois or Nebraska, or if Iowa happens to lose both those next 2 games, what's the other scenario where Iowa can essentially punch its ticket to Indy? I'm kind of curious about that. But anyways, I'll get off here, let other people get on. I appreciate you taking my call, Cory, and have a good night.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it. And Eric brings up in the chat 2 bad mistakes by Deacon. The fumbled snap was on Deacon. The pick was absolutely on Deacon. I don't know what the play call was there. I'll be anxious to get Coach Patterson's thoughts on that play, because it seemed like an odd call, throwing across the field near the goal line. Throw was not even close to being. First of all, the route did not take the receiver into the end zone, so it would have been a situation where we would have had to work for extra yardage to get the touchdown, and it was just a terrible decision to throw that back across the field. And again, kind of an odd call from my perspective as well. We're going to put our phone line people on hold. We'll be right back with you with the super chat. Erica here with the super chat. That was a real team win and legit complimentary football, folks. Let's enjoy it. Go Hawks. Thank you for that, Erica. Appreciate that. Let's see. Mo Parley. Did anyone else notice that Brian fired Ferentz is wearing a simple black hoodie with no tiger hawk. Not an oversight. Didn't support our team for years. Why do it now? No, I didn't notice that, and I really wouldn't read into that, but you do you. Drew with the super chat, thank you. What is a one-loss Iowa team ranked right now? If the Minnesota call's not made, go Hawks. What are they, 22 in the college football playoff rankings? I don't know who is ahead of them. I really don't care too much about the rankings ahead of Iowa right now. I don't care about the rankings in general because Iowa's not in the playoff race. But honestly, they'd probably be at least top 20, top 15, I'd say. And I did bring up the question to the voice of college football, Mark Rogers, a couple weeks ago after that Minnesota game happened. I made the comment. I said, Mark, if somehow Iowa wins out and they're really impressive in winning out and they go 10-2, and then somehow in impressive, dramatic, heroic fashion, blitzkrieg Ohio State or Michigan, does the committee go back and look at that and say, 11-2, and frankly, we never do this, but that call at the end of the Minnesota game was garbage. And by the way, you can say, well, letter of the law, Cory. Well, let's remember that the committee is not governed by the NCAA. The committee is not governed by the Big Ten or those officials or even the rule book, frankly. So you may not like that if you're not an Iowa fan. Iowa fans will love it. But the committee could go back and look at that and say, we're going to actually look at this team as 12-1 Big Ten champions. Conceivably, is that possible? Probably not, but you never know. Brad with the super chat. Thank you, Brad. Hey, Cory, love your show. Please keep up the great work. I appreciate that, Brad. Thank you for the donation and for supporting the show by watching and telling other people about the show. Do appreciate that. We've got Bill. We've got OS for Hawks, Clayton, Randy, and a couple people on our phone line as well. But the man of the hour is here. Coach Don Patterson is with us. Don, it's good to see your face.
Good to be seen, Cory.
So it's not good to see my face, but it's good to be seen.
Good to be seen. My hair might be a kind of a mess, but anyway.
You're good. You're fresh off your trip to Kinnick.
Yes.
A lot of happy fans here in the live chat, and a lot to get to as it relates to both sides of the football, offense, defense, and frankly, special teams was solid again today. But we're going to start with the obvious. Iowa eclipses 400 yards for the first time since October 1st, 2021. Really solid on the ground and in the passing game. They averaged 4 yards per carry on the ground, and I believe over 7 yards per pass attempt, I believe. Talk about what went right. What was different about the offense this week with Deacon Hill at the helm that we haven't seen for the last 5-6 games?
Well, we kept Rutgers off balance with our play calling, and we really hurt them a lot with some pass plays that involved some misdirection. A lot of nakeds, but nakeds out in different forms. Sometimes it was a receiver driving all the way across the field with a crossing route. Other times it was a front side receiver, that was releasing and catching a pass. But I thought we just did a good job. Let's back up a little bit. What really helped even more is we consistently gained. I don't know what our numbers were, but we gained 4 yards a lot on first down with our running game. We got into a lot of second medium, even some second and short. We converted any number of times on third and short, of course. We were always ahead of the chains, and we kept them off balance with our play calling. We had a good mix of run and pass, and we gave Deacon a chance to have a high percentage day, and he did. Some of those throws were thrown behind the line even. Smart football. We know that Nico, if you give him the ball out wide behind the line of scrimmage with some blockers in front of him, he'll make something happen. He'll turn it into positive yardage, I think, just about every time. And our perimeter blocking was better for those kind of plays. Tight ends caught the ball well. Really, I thought it was a wonderful team win. I don't mind telling you, I've already texted Kirk with my congratulations, and I said today, Kirk, you played like a championship football team. And that's exactly what we need to do, because we're going to represent in a few short weeks in Indianapolis, and we need to play like one of the best two teams in the Big Ten. That's hard to do. as stacked as the Big Ten East is. It's hard to do that, but that's our goal, is to compete for a championship. We have to get there first, but I'm confident we're going to be able to do that. And then we'll show up and see what happens. The pressure will be on the other side because, as you've already mentioned, we're not likely to be part of any kind of Final Four. I don't think that's going to happen. They're not going to forget about the fact that on paper we lost to Minnesota. They're not going to forget that. They're going to count that against us, I think.
Real quick, I'm not going to argue with you on that. But
I know you're being hopeful, but you also said not likely to happen. You did say that.
It's not likely to happen, but I also acknowledge the fact that the committee is not governed by the NCAA or by the rules committee or whatever. If they choose to look at, it's all about what they want, and that's kind of the problem with the system as it currently stands. And like Mark Rogers has talked about, it's not really a playoff; it's an invitational, and that is kind of an issue with the committee. But on the plus side, if you're an Iowa fan, they could choose, Don, and call me hopeful if you want, they could choose to say, we believe this team is actually 12-1. And we wouldn't normally say this, but given how they lost that game against Minnesota, given the fact that it did clearly cost them the game, that was the difference in the game. We're going to look at them as a 12-1 football team. If they somehow beat Ohio State or Michigan, I think that conversation is valid, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't worry about any of that, of course, because that's out of our control. We just need to focus on being a 10-2 representative from the West. I mentioned yesterday at Garden Club, I said, I don't have any doubt that we might be able to go with 3 losses to Indianapolis. But I don't want to do that because we as a Western Division football team owe it to the Big Ten to represent in the very best possible way, and that's to be 10-2. So let's do that. Let's represent better. Let's not give anyone a chance to say that this Big Ten championship game is a formality. Let's not give them that opportunity. I don't want to show up with a 9-3 team. We don't need to. We shouldn't have to. We have to still go out and win it. But we proved today we're more than capable of winning these next 2 games and being 10-2 and off to Indianapolis.
How good is this defense, Don? Comparing it to past Iowa defenses, specifically 2022.
Well, it's kind of hard to imagine that we could be as good as 2022 simply because of how highly thought of so many of those defensive players were, and we lost them. But the guys that have filled in so admirably. Is there anyone that thought that Jack Campbell's replacement might play so well that he seemed almost to be another Jack Campbell? That's how well Jay's played this year.
And frankly, Don, I don't know who's better, Nick Jackson or Jay Higgins in different roles. I don't know which one's better, frankly. I think Nick Jackson's been phenomenal since he got his feet under him in mid-September. He has been really, really good.
You're right. Number 10's been all over the place. He's made a lot of plays, and he's obviously really enthused about being here. I heard an interview as we were driving home about how happy he was to be part of this experience at Iowa. So there's so many unsung heroes that are also in the lineup, and I'm talking about guys that maybe only play on specialty units too. But a lot of unsung heroes that do start for us and that make a lot of plays, but maybe their job is more to tie up blockers. I'm talking about some of the defensive linemen, of course, doing a good job of keeping those linebackers clean. That helps a lot. And I can't say enough about the offensive line today because I was concerned going in. And, of course, we lost Logan, I believe, in the second quarter. Is that right? I think that's
Logan Lee.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
On television. Maybe I missed that. I didn't even see it.
I'm talking about Jones.
He didn't play today, did he?
He didn't play at all? I thought he started the game, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, maybe he did, and I missed it. But, he didn't play. Last week it was Ellsbury taking snaps at center. So unless I missed that, I just assumed Ellsbury was in all game.
Maybe he was. The only reason I thought he played is that I heard Podolak say on the radio that he left the game in the second quarter. So I honestly don't know if he did or not. But the bottom line, we won the line of scrimmage today with our offense versus their defense. Our guys had a lot of room to run, and they ran hard. That's a great combination.
How much better was Deacon Hill tonight, Don? You talked about Brian Ferentz and this coaching staff putting him in a position to succeed, and you got to give the receivers credit for the most part, catching the catchable balls, and even a couple of catches that were more difficult catches that were made. I'm really high on Addison Estringa. That young man's going to be really good, kind of like how I felt about Sam Laporta when he was really young. But I'm just curious, how much better, in your opinion, Don, was Deacon Hill collectively as a quarterback, being a former quarterbacks guru like yourself?
Yeah, of course, it's hard for me to say that without looking at the actual game tape. That's how a coach would want to do it, of course, is to study every play to the nth degree. Not able to do that. I just watched from the stands like our fans did. But I give a lot of credit to Deacon and a lot of credit to Brian, too. And for that matter, I think you got to give credit to the entire offensive staff, because I'm sure the other guys on the staff had input into the game plan. I thought our plan was better. It was more diversified. It had more imagination to it. And we did a great job on balance. Incidentally, another factor, and I think you've already touched on it, let's give a lot of credit. I won't call it the 12th man. I'll call it the 12th person. But a lot of noise in that stadium, too. Crowd noise was a significant factor in that game. And if you don't believe me, just read up on what Rutgers had to say after the game. False starts do matter, because 3rd and 2 is so much easier than 3rd and 7. And they backed themselves up any number of times, of course, with those false starts, and it was all tied into crowd noise.
Just curious, Don, before we get to our next caller, Bill is up next in our queue. Lamansky called earlier and wanted to know specifically about they're up 22-0, and I'm sure you're going to know the next question that comes out here. He wants to know why not go with Joe Labus or Marco Lainez and get them on the field. It doesn't hurt Marco Lainez to play right now because you can play up to 4 games and conserve eligibility. The flip side of this, and I don't agree with this take. Okay, I don't agree with this take in the chat. I respect it, but I don't agree with it. He said, this is our Salu Kim in the chat, says the starters deserve to finish the game. It's more important than getting other players in. I don't agree with that, but Don, give me your take on the situation. Did you think about that at all when they were up 22-0, get the true freshman in the game?
Well, knowing our history, it didn't really cross my mind that we were going to do that, say it that way. But I do disagree with the person that posted that statement. It does matter a lot. I don't know how many backups we got in the game there. Like you say, I think we went up 22-0. And then the ball ended up in our hands. We were 22 on the previous to the last possession. Is that right? I think that's right. I think we made 22 with maybe 6 minutes left. We got the ball back and we burned up the clock. We had to drive down the field and do it, of course. But my point is that we were 22-0, and we had a chance to give any number of backups the last possession. And I do know we got people in like Weegan. Weegan got in the game some there toward the end. I honestly didn't notice for sure about reserves at all kinds of positions. Obviously, we rotated all 3 of our top backs through, and any number of tight ends played, of course, because our 1 and 2 are out. But
and they also didn't throw. Let's just make this clear. They also did not, in Kirk's defense, Brian's, they didn't throw the ball a single time on that last drive. They ran Caleb Johnson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times and then took a knee. So I'm not saying that would have been wasteful for bringing in Lainez and having him hand the ball off, but it's not like you're taking shots on the field at 22-0 anyways. But I think the argument, that the topic is still valid.
Well, I would still argue that even allowing Marco just to hand the ball off 6 times does have value.
Sure. Just
being able to huddle up out in the field and run the offense in terms of making the call and getting the break in plenty of time and surveying the defense and handling the snap. Those things do have some value to it. So, yeah, looking back, I wish we would have done that, absolutely. And I understand the argument that the starters deserve to be out there for the end, but let's not forget, this is the way we should be doing business all the time. And if that's the case, starters understand we've done our job, done it well. Now the backups have a chance to get in and finish up. So let's celebrate the fact that they get to play in the game too.
All right, let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse. Before we go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, one more thing. I want to make sure we give our sponsors their due this afternoon, or I should say this evening now, the 7 o'clock hour. RTI Threads, Cooper DeJean, superstar on this team, and they've got all of Cooper DeJean's merchandise, including the It Wasn't a Fair Catch shirt, which is, I know, been real hot off the shelves this week, Don. So certainly check it out, cd3lacesup.com and rtithreads.com. They've got a full line of apparel from some of Iowa's current stars and future stars, including Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, as we mentioned, Aaron Graves, and Cooper DeJean. Aiden Hall also part of that roster, and their NIL roster continues to grow and expand to different sports. rtithreads.com and cd3lacesup.com. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Bill is on the line. Bill, welcome to the show. Don, am I frozen or what's happening?
Earth to Bill.
Bill?
Earth to Bill.
Bill? Bill is not... Bill, please tell us.
There
are
he
you
is.
okay, Bill? Are you having no, it's okay. You're not having a medical emergency, are you, Bill?
No, I was watching the OU game.
Okay. just want to make sure. You weren't responding to us. I just didn't want to have to call medics. So we're good. Welcome to the show, sir.
Great. I appreciate your show a lot. Watch it every week. And this is the first time I've been on chat. So thank you.
Appreciate you calling in.
I don't really have anything to say except go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
I'm an Iowa graduate and a former faculty member at OU. So I'm a Sooner Hawk.
You're a Sooner Hawk, and I'm assuming you're a big Bob Stoops fan then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, Bill, you got to be a Drake Stoops fan also.
Yes. So thank you for putting me on. I'm sorry I don't have much to contribute here.
No, you're fine. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being a part of the show.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Bill just wanted to check in with us, Don. So appreciate Bill checking in with us, and he is watching the OU Sooners right now. What is the score of that game? I guess I can pull that up. James, let me make sure we got James in the chat. Thank you to Mike Rooney with the Venmo donation. He says, thanks, Cory, for all you do for the fans of the Hawks. Way to go, Phil. Defensive shutout. All the scoring today by the Hawks almost made me dizzy. Hopefully this gives our kids on offense a little more confidence. Keep doing your thing, Cory. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And, man, Don, I mentioned this earlier to Alex. Iowa, I believe, I just went off of the box score, but I counted up the numbers, and I believe Iowa, am I correct in saying 76 offensive snaps for Iowa today?
Unbelievable.
I mean, what's a proficient offense? I mean, I don't know if you ever rate proficiency based on how many snaps a team takes, but obviously you dominate time of possession, you're going to win that category as well. So what would be the ideal number of snaps for an offense to take?
Well, I think if you can consistently score 70 times, that's pretty good. Now that the timing rule changed a little bit, 70 is an even loftier goal than it was a year ago. I think the typical game nowadays maybe has no more than 130 snaps. And, of course, if you're above average, then you're something above 65. So to be in the 70s is going to give you time of possession in your favor. Obviously, it indicates that the defense is doing a good job of getting off the field. And offensively, you're doing a decent job of staying on the field. Probably ties into third down conversions. I don't doubt that we won that today, too.
Third down, I had that stat for you, Don. Iowa on third downs today. They were... You're much more efficient with looking at box scores. 9 of 18, Don. 9 of 18 compared to 2 of 11 for Rutgers. And if you count in fourth downs, which is what you do because, we're talking critical downs, Iowa would have been 11 of 20 downs. Those are winning numbers, Don.
I'll tell you this, and I even mentioned it in conversation with Kirk. One of the things I did in preparation for this game, I looked at Rutgers 6 games that they played, and I simply looked at all the parameters, 25 parameters in all 6 of those games. And what I was hoping is that the team that won a specific parameter ended up 6-0. Which parameters guaranteed were identified with the winner in all 6 games. As you know, they were 3-3, but they did have good losses, such as Michigan, Ohio State. They played them both already, right?
Michigan, I believe they played Michigan.
Or maybe
last week.
Can't remember. I think they played 2 of them already, and I think they have Penn State up ahead, I think. Whatever, they played 2 of them. So my point was, are there any parameters that have been 100% reliable in identifying the winner in their 6 games? There were 2 parameters that did that. One of them I thought was really important, and that was simply every starting field position. So Kirk and I were certainly in agreement. We need to win that parameter because that's one that we like to win also. Matter of fact, in our 6 games, every starting field position was identified as the winning team 5 out of 6 games. The only exception was that dreaded Penn State loss. We barely beat them on field position that night. We beat them by 1.4 yards, just to give an example. The bad news, that was the only parameter among the top 15 that we won in that game. So obviously you got to do a lot more than just win on field position. It was such a goofy game. They were kicking to us, which meant we always got to start on the 25. How many kicks did they have? 4 or 5 kicks. And at the same time, after starting on the 25, if we made a first down or 2, when we punted the ball, they ended up starting on the -10, -15 a lot of the time. So in the end, we had better field position. Didn't do us any good, of course, because they more than overcame that with the way they dominated us with offense, defense. So Kirk understood we absolutely have to win on field position. I'm confident we did, of course. And then beyond that, the thing that shocked me too, the other parameter they identified the winner every time was critical downs. And I said, here's the good news, Kirk. We've won any number of games this year when we lost on critical downs. So even though it ties into winning, if you're looking at Rutgers 6 games, we can beat them too without winning on critical downs. Well, we smoked them on critical downs also. So we even got that done. Is it any wonder that we won the game? So the things that mattered the most were things that we won.
All right, folks, we're going to now welcome in HawkeyeReport.com's own Tom Kakert joining the show. Tom, welcome.
Gentlemen, how are we?
We're doing good, Tom.
Hi,
How
Tom.
are you?
I'm good. How are you, Coach?
Couldn't be much better.
Yeah, it's a good
good.
day for the Iowa football program, and dare I say, the offense looked decent.
If someone
Decent, a
would have
good
told
word.
you, Tom, we're gonna outgain them 3-1, you would not have believed that, would you?
I would not have believed 400 yards was on total offense. The first time they've done that since the Maryland game at Maryland a couple years ago that they've gotten over 400 yards of total offense. First time this season that they've had a 200-yard passer. So
Right.
a lot of positives for and given where the Iowa offensive line was going into this week with 3 guys that left the game last week, Logan Jones out fairly quickly today, and kind of shuttling some guys in on the guard position. And Deontay Vines, one of their better receivers, didn't play. Given all of those things and all the hits they've taken at tight end, I'm really impressed with what they were able to do. And this Rutgers defense is pretty solid. It is not a bad defensive team. If you look at their numbers going into this week, they were on par, at least, rush defense, pass defense, turnovers, sacks, all those things with the Iowa defense this year. So this was a salty group, and Iowa found something, and it's strange. I almost think that drive that resulted in the interception at the end of the first half may have given them the confidence going into the second half that they hey, we could throw the ball a little bit. We can run we can move the ball in the air. And what Deacon looks like a decent quarterback today, and that's a positive step in the right direction.
Absolutely. A lot of positive. Deacon played his best game. Obviously, Caleb was impressive. That was his coming out party. What was neat about the offense numbers, we outrushed them by 100 yards, and we outpassed them by 100 yards. Both of them more than 100, of course. And let's give a lot of credit to our defense again. I didn't think they were averaging about 150 yards a game in conference play, rushing the football. We held them to 34 or something? I don't know if they ever made it to 40.
Yeah, 34 yards. And Monogahee, their running back, was leading the Big Ten in rushing, and I think he had over 150 against Ohio State last week. And Iowa holds him to 39 yards rushing today, only 3 yards a carry. I mean, that's impressive that they were able to do that.
You know what made it more impressive is we didn't compromise our coverage to do that. We still played Iowa defense. You didn't see us loading the box. We didn't have to. We did have a safety down a lot of the time. He was typically spinning down late. So we had one of our safeties that was headed downhill on the snap. That's true. But truthfully, our safety didn't make that many tackles because the front seven made so many of them.
Hey, you want to know the funny thing I heard today? I was got down to the field towards the end of the game, and I'm walking by the stands, and a couple of fans started chanting "Rehire Brian."
Oh boy.
Let's open up that can 2 weeks in, Tom.
Well, right now,
I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny.
That's pretty funny. I do recall what happened the week after we smoked Ohio State. We went to Wisconsin and laid a huge egg.
66 yards of total offense, Coach.
Yeah, I am thankful that our next game is.
And the only reason Iowa scored any points that day was because Josh Jackson picked off 2 passes and returned them for scores.
Yeah, I vividly do remember we had 14 points and 14 yards of total offense at the same time. That was in the middle of the third quarter.
Now we should add in the asterisk here that that there's a big difference in responding after a big win like that, going on the road to Madison, as opposed to staying home against an Illini team that's not very good.
Hey, but we also saw it last year, and I think this will be something maybe that they talk about, because last year, going into that final home game, Iowa had a chance to clinch a trip to Indianapolis, and they didn't do it. They didn't get the job done, and now they have 1 year later. They're 2 games up on everybody else. All they got to do is win one more of the last 2 games, and they punched their ticket to Indianapolis. So, they've got opportunity knocking, and I know these guys would. I mean, that's the way you want to go out, right? You want to last home game, lock up a Big Ten West championship, the final Big Ten West championship too, because it will no longer exist after this year. And it's right there for the taking.
And Tom, one of our callers earlier wanted me to ask you that specific question, because I'm sure you looked at this closer than I have. West scenarios, are you saying that if Iowa wins either or, regardless of what the rest of the conference does, if they win either or, they're in?
Yeah, they're 2 games up on everybody right now. Everybody else has got 4 losses. Iowa's only got 2. So it is right there. It's wild to think about. One of the funnier moments in the press conference today was, at least for me, and Coach Patterson will appreciate this, because he was talking about Deacon Hill's car. Apparently, Deacon's got a little bit of a jalopy, a little bit of a worn out car. And he made reference to it might need a trip to Earl Scheib. And Coach Patterson will know who Earl Scheib is. Cory probably has no idea who Earl Scheib is.
Earl Scheib. Now, maybe I'm confusing it. Tell me what Earl Scheib is, Don.
Earl Scheib.
Go ahead, Tom.
It's a place where you used to go get your car painted.
Okay.
You do it for $99.95.
Yeah, just need a paint job. Don't need a new engine.
That reference was most certainly from Kirk, not from Deacon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was from Kirk about Deacon's car.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I knew Coach Patterson would appreciate the Earl Scheib reference because all of us have drove cars back in the day that were junk and could have used a trip to Earl Scheib.
Yeah, here's a question: is Earl Scheib still in business? I don't know.
I don't even know. I don't even know. But
don't believe so. If Cory's never heard of Earl Scheib, that's a good indication they may not be in business.
First, but so how long ago would that have been? Would that have been like when Kirk was growing up, or was that more recent?
Oh no, it was when I was growing up. Kirk's older than me, so it was when I was a teen. Yeah, there used to be Earl Scheibs all over the place. It was a chain.
So not to move on from the Earl Scheib.
Yeah, let's move on from Earl Scheib.
I do want to ask you about Deontay Vines. You mentioned he's out. So next man in at receiver, right?
Yep.
I'll just say what everybody's thinking. Caleb Brown looked better than Deontay Vines has all year.
Yes.
Now,
I think he's earned the opportunity now.
So do you think will Deontay Vines be back? Do you anticipate him being back here in the last month of the season?
I don't know what his injury was. We didn't really ask Kirk about those guys. We had just so many other things to ask him about. So we didn't really do an injury update with him, but it sounds like he's going to get Logan Jones back. Logan went out there, tried to give it a go tonight and lasted, I think, a series, and then he was done, and Ellsbury was in there.
Don, you got a good eye because nobody else. I know people in the chat said Logan Jones didn't play today. I didn't see him play today. You did. So
he did. He started.
Yeah, I thought I saw him out there with the first possession.
First possession, and then he just couldn't go, and so they just they got him out of there, and he was done for the day. I'm looking on here. Yeah, the starting line was Nick DeYoung, Logan Jones, Dunker, Colby, Richmond. So and we saw Rusty Feth out there a little bit, so he was in there a good amount today. So he was another one of the injured guys too.
Pete Piper as well.
I did not see him in there, but I see he was listed in there, so maybe he snuck in there at some point.
Yeah, he was mentioned by the BTN crew, and I believe at left guard. I never saw him, but the name was brought up. So unless it was a misread of a number, it was.
He's listed in the participation list, so I don't know when he got out there. I didn't see him, but it doesn't mean he didn't go out there. I'm not checking the O-line every play.
Can we just, Tom, he's an example. I mean, let me make sure everybody knows this. He got here in the summer.
Yeah.
When he was a late commit. What did he commit? Was he like 230 pounds when he committed, Tom?
Yeah, he was not very big, but he could throw the shot put a long way. I always enjoy watching him, that video of him throwing it, a shot put basically almost into the woods. But yeah, he's a guy that they really like. We talked to Jennings Dunker about him on Tuesday, and he was singing his praises about how just he's a tough kid, and he's one of those farm kids that just has that farm boy strength is how I like to call it, where he can just move things and do things that just based on being raised on a farm and throwing hay bales and those sorts of things. So, yeah.
And let's give a shout out to another freshman who made a huge play, super explosive play today, in Zach Ortworth. Don, you're a former tight ends coach. Talk about that play. I wanted to bring this up later in the show. Anyways, we might as well address it now. Explain what happened. I know you haven't watched the game back on film, but explain the call there, because obviously when it works out the way it did to an unheralded guy like Ortworth, you're thinking great execution, but great play call from Brian Ferentz. Talk about that play.
Well, I did hear Shano mention that they busted the coverage there, he said. But I have to admit, as the play unfolded, I thought, how did he get so open? And it occurred to me, this is what could be done, and I wondered if maybe that's what we did. Think about this. Could you actually line up a tight end where the left tackle normally lines up next to the guard and put the tackle in on the other side of the formation? In other words, have have tackles beside each other on the right side and have the tight end sneakily lined up as the left tackle. Well, if he's the end man of the line, he's still the eligible receiver, right? And I wondered, did they do that? How did he get so open? I'm still not sure if they did it or not. If they did it, I didn't catch it at the time. Of course, I wouldn't.
I'm not about to break down formation football. What I can tell you is Addison Estringa was lined up as a fullback, and as he kind of went up and out, for maybe 5 yards up and out, both defenders followed him, and Zach Ortworth leaked. And he was lined up on the left side line. I just don't know if he was outside the left tackle or if they lined him up.
Yeah, I would imagine he was in a normal, traditional position. In other words, lined up next to the left tackle, not the left guard. But it did make me wonder, he got so open, was that what we would refer to as a hide play? Did you hide the tight end where the left tackle normally is and release him down the field? I don't think they did that, but it made me wonder he was so open. Makes more sense, Cory, what you said. You got two tight ends releasing vertically, pretty much just a few yards apart. The outside receiver among those two breaks outside the inside safety ran with him and left the seam for the other tight end. That's probably what happened. In other words, it was actually a trips formation at that point. Go ahead, Tom.
Deacon talked about Ortworth on that play, and he said, I could see his eyes, and his eyes were gigantic when that ball was coming towards him, because he was like, oh no, here it comes, and I'm open, and I got to catch it.
Great throw.
I was going to say, I'm just thrilled that we did not overthrow that open tight end down the field. You might recall a couple of other passes in the game were overthrown. And here's the reality. They had decent coverage, I think, both times. But the DB was in a trail position. And in other words, the guy with the best chance to catch the overthrown ball was our receiver. My only point is, if you just take a little bit off that throw, worst case scenario, the receiver has to gear down, waiting on the ball. It's a little bit short. And in the meantime, of course, the DB that's trying to give chase and catch up runs into him. Now the flag flies. Maybe you catch it anyway and you can deny the penalty, but at the worst, you get the DPI.
I've been big on Addison Estringa for quite a while, and he's our RTI Threads player of the game. Just 47 yards, but 8 receptions, and he finally looked like. I mean, he has turned into the safety blanket for Deacon Hill, and rightfully so. Tom, we haven't really talked about his connection with Deacon Hill, but I'm guessing that those two got a lot of chemistry built when Deacon was QB2. And, Addison's really come along as well, a guy who was completely unheralded and comes out of Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and works his way into some playing time as a freshman. Now he's the number 1 tight end. I don't know if you have any update on Steven Stylianos, but man, Pascuzzi, Stylianos, and now Ortworth, they just next man in is certainly true at that position.
And there was a point where he kind of limped off, where Estringa did, and I was a little worried. I was like, "Oh my gosh, they can't afford to leak any more oil."
Yeah, and I do recall seeing Stylianos on the sideline. He was not dressed for the game either.
No, he was not dressed. So, but Estringa limped off a little bit during the game today, and was a little bit worried about that. But fun fact about Estringa was he is a former Iowa baseball commit. He was committed first to play baseball for the Hawkeyes, and came to camp, earned the offer, and decided he was going to play football. And I think that's going to probably pay off for him, because I would think that eventually he's going to develop into a potential NFL player, like a lot of Iowa tight ends. So he's got a good chemistry going on that little rollout pass that he and Deacon seem to be finding each other a lot. And it's not a big gainer at this point, but it's chipping away at 5 to 10 yards of completion. And for the Iowa offense, that's kind of what they need.
Real quick, I want to acknowledge the super chat, and then I got like 1 or 2 more questions for you, Tom. I know you got to get going. Scott says the channel's a really great way to enjoy the season. Coach Don is an amazing analyst. So happy for all the fans and team getting to 8-2. Watch out for Illinois. Paddock is a good QB. Put up big numbers today in their overtime win against the Hoosiers. Thank you, Scott, for the super chat. But Tom, you've been covering this program for so long. Who do you credit primarily for the consistent output of tight end talent. And let me preface your answer by saying this. Brian Ferentz, in my mind, deserves credit. But Kirk Ferentz deserves credit. I would assume you would have to give credit to people like Kenny O'Keefe and Greg Davis, even during the short stint he was here.
Sure.
They've been consistent throughout. And I'm trying to think, Reese Morgan, did he coach tight ends briefly?
Reese did. LeVar did.
LeVar did. So how do they continue to do this regardless of who the position coach is?
It's the offense, and it's also the tradition. And that tradition goes back to when Don Patterson was the offensive coordinator at Iowa, and when Bill Snyder was the offensive coordinator at Iowa, where Iowa has a tradition, and they feature tight ends. That goes back to Marv Cook and Alan Cross and Scott Slutzker, and the list goes on and on. Jonathan Hayes, Don, I'm forgetting some of them, but I'm rattling them off. And but some great players.
Let me share this with both of you. To Bill Snyder's credit, back in the early '80s, Bill said, "Don, I know you want your tight ends to be as involved as possible in the passing game. And to that end, I'm going to ask you every week to come up with different ways in which to involve the tight ends within the passing game. And that's part of your job description. So please take it seriously." And I did. And we did come up with a lot of good ways to distribute the ball to the tight ends. And it all started way back in the 80s. You're right. Jim Swift was on our very first football team, and he was a good tight end too.
Yep.
And then, of course, John Hayes came along next, and then Marv Cook, and then let's not forget about Al Cross, because Al could run and catch too. How could anybody forget 76 Hot against Ohio State?
Ohio State, yeah. Ohio State, 1991.
Yeah. And I appreciate it so much. Coach Vermeil did that game, and when we ran the play, he said that is a classic example of one coaching staff outsmarting the other coaching staff. And I appreciate him for telling the truth and saying that, because we were the ones that were on the good end of that play.
Jack,
hey, Don, I might have been able to score on that play, by the way. I may have been able to catch.
I remember Zabel's comment. He's open by 25 miles.
Yep.
Jack, appreciate the super chat here, and he wants to know, Tom, what did Kirk say about shutting down Monangai, leading rusher in the Big Ten into this game?
Yeah, just that it was a group effort. Just that they really got after it and, took on the challenge and just played solid defense. And I know Jay Higgins was talking about how hard Monangai hit everybody on. He was a hard runner. And I always echo back to what Iowa players used to tell me about trying to tackle like Sean Green in practice, where it hurt them to tackle him in practice. So, they just, and frankly, I thought Rutgers went away from him way too early. It was weird, but he was on the injured list. He was on the questionable list. So maybe it was some management there with him being maybe a little dinged up. But well,
he also collided with an Iowa defender. Who was it that he was down for? Monangai was down for a while. I don't remember who he met.
Yeah.
It might have been it was Xavier Wampa. I'm sorry, it was Xavier Wampa.
Okay.
Wampa got away with a little bit of a taunt after that play, but Monangai was down for a while. So I wonder, just 13 carries on the day.
Yeah, and I was also surprised that Wimsett was not as mobile, and they didn't use his legs as much as I thought they would. I thought he was going to be terrorizing the Iowa defense on third downs, just rolling out. And then
that is precisely what I was going to mention. This part shocked me as I was prepping for the game. I couldn't help think about this. If you look at conference games only, the number 2 rusher in the conference was Monangai, but here's the part that shocked me. Guess who was the number 11 rusher in the conference? It was Wimsett. So I'm thinking, so often he did a good job of carrying out fakes even. And I was thinking, why in God's name? A couple of times they did run him on kind of the equivalent of QB power. They just took the ball and let the back lead for him. And they made a few yards with it, but there was no deception involved. I swear if they would have just simply asked him to keep off some of those run fakes, he would have made good yardage, I think. Somewhere in the game he would have, because that's what he did on so many occasions. He handed the ball off and carried out the fake. He did a good job carrying out the fake, but he never had the ball.
Yeah. Yep.
It was like they were trying to protect him or something. I don't know.
Last thing for me, Tom, and then if Don, you have anything else for Mr. Kakert before he leaves, that's fine. But Caleb Brown's emergence, I mean, we talked about a little bit earlier with Deontay Vines being out.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen some people on the chat. Where has this been? What do you detect has been the issue or the slowness getting him going? Has it just been a maturation thing, or have there been some off-field stuff that hasn't been widely talked about?
Yeah, I think there's just been some maturity development, but also just some struggles with the Iowa offense. There was no receivers catching the ball other than tight ends for the first, 5 weeks of the season, really, at any high level. I mean, you had an occasional, Seth Anderson or Vines on the sidelines or whatever, but I don't think you've had a lot of wide receivers. So maybe there's just something bubbling up here, and we'll see. I see Jason asking, is Lachey expected back for bowl game? Maybe. I think the door is open, and that's why they keep listing him on the injury report, is because I think they're hopeful. I did talk to Caden McNamara today before the game. He was back after he had his ACL repair, and he's just about he could move around without crutches, but he's still on crutches. But he was like, I don't really need him anymore. So I think his rehab process and his surgery and everything went well. So good news is he's back. Yeah, he was on the bench and sidelines, and he was down there, talking to Deacon a lot. And Deacon did give credit to Cade, gave credit to Spencer Petras as well for helping him out as he's kind of tried to navigate being a starter at the college level.
And real quick, I know I said last question, but my last question, and then Don, I'll throw it to you. Theoretically, playing in a candy land, as we like to do here on the show at times, if somehow Iowa wins out and somehow wins in the Big Ten championship game in an impressive fashion, do you foresee any scenario, like if they beat, I know we can't even foresee this, but they somehow beat Michigan like 30-7. Is there any way the playoff committee says, we don't normally do this, but man, 12-1 Big Ten champion would get in, and we just have to look at that call against Minnesota and put this Iowa team in a 14 playoff? Any chance that happens in your mind?
Depends on what's going on around the country. Really, it does. I mean, if you've got 3 undefeateds and then you've got a 1-loss Texas and a 1-loss Oregon or something like that, then it's hard to put them in. It just is. Those other schools have a better resume. So, but if there's some upsets and, you maybe a 2-loss team versus, a 1-loss team here or whatever, maybe the conversation is had. But let's get to that bridge when we get there, right? We'll see if you got to win next week to make this possible, and then win the next week to make that possible, and then it's like the old saying in poker, when you get to Indianapolis, it's a chip and a chair, right? Where you're as long as you got a chance. The only way you have a chance to win is if you're invited to the game. So you just go and you got the chip in the chair and you got a chance, and we'll see what happens.
Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com. Don, anything else for Tom before we let him slide?
Can't think of anything. Tom, you're always really helpful.
Hey, thanks, Coach. Thanks, Cory. And we'll talk to you, Cory. Maybe we'll catch up after the Clayton game on Tuesday night.
We've got basketball ahead. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thanks.
Appreciate Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com. Definitely check out the Hawkeye Home on On3's network of sites. And we've got a number of people who have been waiting very patiently on hold. So we're going to get to absolutely everybody in just a second. Do want to take a moment to acknowledge our RTI Threads player of the game. And Don, I had a hard time as I'm combing through the stat line. Who do I go with? Very balanced statistically throughout the defense. And I would say, because each level of defense played pretty well. I thought the defensive line was active. Wimstead is a hard guy to get home on because he is mobile. He certainly didn't play great, but you don't see a ton of linebacker tackles, and you certainly don't see a ton of DB tackles in this game. And it also helps that the offense was on the field a little bit more. Then you look at the offensive side of things. Who do you go with? I just thought Addison, his help in not only staying even and on time with the chains, but moving the chains in short yardage situations, those 47 yards and 8 receptions was huge, especially for a young guy who is not used to being tight end one.
Right. And I think a lot of those running plays, let's give the tight end position a little bit of credit for doing their job, because we consistently picked up 4 yards or more on any number of running plays.
All right, we'll go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, who's on the line. Hey, Trent, how are you?
Good. How are you, Cory?
Doing good, sir.
Good. I'm going to make this quick. I just have a few comments I guess I'm going to make. I haven't been able to watch the show since I've been on hold, but I hope they continue to utilize Caleb Brown like they did tonight. I think that all but ensures he's probably going to be here next year. Whether it's by design or by default, I really don't care. We just got to keep that kid here.
I agree. I would hope that Cade McNamara, given what he did as a transfer portal pull this past offseason, the fact that he's announced he's coming back, he's going to be, especially since he's limited with what he can do physically, he's really going to be working the portal again like he did last year, and that starts with the guys on the roster who you got to retain.
Right. I'm going to fly through this, Cory. Then next, I'm just going to say I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Brian Ferentz, he called a great game tonight. I mean, let's not that Rutgers defense is nothing to laugh at. I mean, what he did tonight is, and we've seen it in glimpses, right? I mean, but I'm going to give him credit tonight. He did what he had to do. That was a great game.
Don, would you agree? Would you agree with that, Don? Great game called by Brian Ferentz.
Well, it was certainly his best game of the season. I would say that. I hesitate to use the word great. You know, I think that gets thrown around a little too often. But certainly he called an excellent game, no doubt about that. And he did have something to do with our success. We gave our quarterback a better chance to make more routine plays, and he did that. And that was good to see. And of course, as I mentioned already, we did a good job of keeping them off balance. We had a better mix of run and pass. And they didn't know what to do about it. You know, the misdirection passes really did help out.
All right. Then the last thing, I think, so after this game was over, and I really just take a step back as an Iowa fan, and I look at, I've been critical of Kirk over the years. I think a lot of Iowa people have, probably, right? What I'm going to say is this: when your head coach is going to pass Bo Schembechler at some point this season, whether it's next week, the week after, whatever the case may be, I think as Iowa fans, we got to take a step back and realize that we have last 50 years we've been truly blessed. Iowa's not your blue blood program. It's not Ohio State, and it's not Michigan. What Hayden did, and then what Kirk continued to do, is really nothing short than just a tremendous coaching job. And I guess I don't know what to say. You know, I just took a step back tonight, and when you start putting all those numbers into perspective, we're truly blessed to be Iowa fans. I think the knock always has been that under Kirk, we just haven't had that offense. You know, there's years where probably we are national title contenders with a good offense. I don't know, but I just feel blessed, guys. I thank you both again for everything you guys do. Keep up the good work, and yeah, go Hawks.
Thank you, Trent. Appreciate the phone call, sir. I agree with everything Trent just said, Don, and frankly, if you look at the track record for Kirk Ferentz in the last 5 to 10 years, despite the fact that we're 15 to 24 years into his tenure, they are winning a lot of games, and a lot of coaches, when they get into the latter years after 20 some years at the helm, those numbers begin to dip, and perhaps like a Bobby Bowden situation, a guy kind of overstays his welcome a little bit. And, obviously we're not to the end of the Kirk Ferentz era, but it is impressive that in spite of the struggles on offense, that they have continued to win ball games. And even with the change in how football is played, with an emphasis on, spreading your opponent out and scoring a lot of points, Iowa still wins games. They've done it a different way than almost anybody else. Doug with the super chat. Phil Parker not to win the Broyles Award would be wrong. Oh, I would agree with that. How many Broyles Awards has he won? Do you know, Don?
I don't.
I would agree with that. How do you give that to anybody else? Lamansky, think Nebraska played 3 quarterbacks today. I did see that Chubba Purdy was one of those quarterbacks that played. And Leon, appreciate that, Lamansky. Leon says O-line had its best day, especially pass blocking. We definitely agree with that. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hey, Cory, Don, it's Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
How you guys doing
What's
tonight?
up, Kyle?
I said, how you guys doing tonight?
He wants to know how you're doing, Don. How are you doing?
It's all good. It's all good
All
tonight.
in the neighborhood, Kyle.
All right. Well, it was really like a good second half to watch. First half was same as always, but I really like how they came out, played really good football to the end of the second half, and actually gave us something to cheer about.
Absolutely. Were you at the game,
And,
Kyle?
Was I at the game?
Yeah, were you there?
No, I wasn't, but I'll be at the game next week,
Okay.
senior day.
Amen.
And I was watching the game with my family. We were pretty excited to see Quinn Schulte's interception. Like, we know him. I know him since high school. Since second grade, and good friends. And I was really excited to see him.
Yeah.
Get one, and hopefully had a pick six, but
Let's talk
didn't
about
have
Quinn
it.
Schulte real quick, Don, because I was impressed with that play simply because it's another example of how we always hear about how Iowa DBs are not just taught to catch the football if it comes their way, but as soon as one of their teammates catches a football, they go into blocking mode. And it's always it's artistry to watch. And that play was so well blocked by the defensive players once that interception occurred, nearly returned it to the house.
You're exactly right. He was the beneficiary of any number of teammates with blocking, some blocking success, and he didn't score, but he came close to it. That's for sure.
Anything else, Kyle?
One more thing to add, like watching the post game interview, Kirk said possibly could hand retirement at the end of the season. I think we should keep an eye on that. I keep an eye on it since the Brian Ferentz thing.
Well, I don't know first of all, I don't know what I heard the interview. I doubt he said anything at the press conference. I didn't ask Tom about it because Tom wasn't watching the TV broadcast, but Kirk did make a comment to the sideline reporter for BTN after the game, Don. Something about we don't talk about retirement. She asked a question about the Big Ten title, the Big Ten West title. He responded with something to the extent of, we're worried about one game at a time. We're not talking about retirement. Those are all off-season things. It was a little odd that he brought that up, but that has been questioned. It's been brought up to him over the last couple of weeks. I don't think you read too far into that, but I do see some people in the chat wondering about, should we read into Kirk being the one to bring it up during his post-game interview with Big Ten Network?
I haven't heard the interview, so I don't know exactly in what context he said it. Would it shock me if we win the West and especially show up well at Indianapolis? Would it shock me if he decided that'd be a good time to call it quits? It wouldn't shock me, no, because you always want to feel good about how you finish, and at that point, you might even argue that maybe this is Kirk's best job ever. With all the injuries we've had, there's certainly an argument to say that he's never coached better than what he has this year.
Anything else, Kyle?
All right. You guys going to be at the game next week for Senior Day?
Don will. I don't know about me. Probably not.
Yes, I will.
All right. I'll be there rocking the Quinn Schulte jersey for him, supporting him, and hopefully he plays well. And that's all I got. Keep up the good work. Talk to you next time.
Rock on, brother. All right. Leon with the super chat. We already discussed this. Thank you, Leon. Appreciate that. And Lamansky, move aside, Bo in Michigan. Here come the Hawkeye coaches breaking your records. Smile, Don Patterson. Smile. There you go. There's the smile. Now, what did somebody made a comment a while back that every time Don Patterson smiles, a kitten is born. Now, is that true?
I don't think that's been proven, but
okay. Eric with the super chat. He says, hats off to the O-line. They played their best game so far. Good game for Deacon Hill. Way to sizzle Bacon. KH, thank you for that super chat, Eric. KH says, how many backup offensive linemen played tonight? Well, it sounds like Cade Piper played a little bit. Tyler Ellsbury's playing a lot with Logan Jones out with an injury. And we're seeing a rotation of guys. Obviously, Mason Richmond's really important, as is Jennings Dunker. But we're seeing guys like Connor Colby, Rusty Feth playing through injury. And I believe they're still down Nick DeYoung right now, Don. I don't believe 56 got in the game tonight. Bo Stevens is still out as well. But they've used 8 linemen this year.
I thought I saw DeYoung on the field. Maybe not, but I thought I saw 56 out there. He's not listed as a participant?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? So let's see. No. Maybe you saw Cade Piper. Cade Piper's 58.
That could be.
He did line up at guard. 56 not listed on here.
Okay.
So and just a couple other notes. I know people care about this stuff. True freshmen that played again today. We mentioned Zach Ortworth and Cade Piper. John Nestor, the Chicago native and DB, he also saw the field this evening. So good to see him get some time. I know the coaching staff has been impressed with his development early on. And let's not forget, Don, yes, they're down to right now at tight end. They're down to Pascuzzi and Ostringa and Zach Ortworth. However, I think it's pretty clear they're fairly comfortable if they need to use Hayden Large in a tight end role and move in a guy like Rusty Van Wetzinga to fullback. My guess is they do that quicker than they would move a freshman like a Grant Leaper, maybe that I don't know if they have a lot of confidence in a guy like Grant Leaper who just got to campus a few months ago. But They've got options with Hayden Large, who's seen the field a lot, and he's obviously got the size to play as a tight end. So as an tight end. Okay, Lamansky. Appreciate this super chat. Lamansky, Jazz from Florida has big-time wiggle, just needs blocking. We talked after the Iowa State game about how good Jazz Patterson looked in pass blocking, Don. He got hurt, has missed some time. I think LaShawn Williams probably has the best wiggle, quote unquote, the best make your guy miss type of action, if you will, on the ground. Jazz hits hard, obviously. What would you say? How would you rate how Iowa's backs are playing right now? Again, a very healthy 3.9 yards per rush, which I think is basically the benchmark, right?
Yes, I felt good about all three of them. I thought they all ran hard. They were decisive in how they ran. They didn't dance around without attacking the downfield. They were determined to make positive yardage with each and every carry, and I think they pretty much did. It's a rare case when we got tackled for a loss today. There were 2 or 3 maybe, but not many.
Jason, I'm glad you provided some clarification because I think it was kind of hard to understand what Kirk was saying on the BTN broadcast. Jason says that Kirk was talking about tying Bo's record. So that was the initial question from the sideline reporter. Kirk responded by talking about how that's stuff you discuss and think about in the offseason and during retirement. So maybe a little bit of a misinformation about what exactly he said. And I didn't hear Kirk real clearly. I thought it was odd that he brought that up. But again, appreciate the clarification there, Jason. And let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got OS for Hawks on the line. OS for Hawks, welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. I thought you forgot about me for a little while.
Did I see you during the game? Did you respond to something on my Twitter? And it was
Yes, I did.
Let me find it because I thought it was an interesting. Scroll here.
I don't even remember what it is. That's what happens when you get older, right, Coach?
Oh, Don, this gentleman responded to me during the game and said, "Someone explain why you would run any route short of the goal line in that situation." Of course, he's talking about the interception to Deacon Hill. Don, can you talk about what that play call was? Do you know, without looking at it back on tape, the one that resulted in the interception? Terrible decision by Deacon.
Right. The only thing that comes to mind for me, a real basic fundamental rule of red zone offense is you do not throw late to the pylon. And I thought the ball came out late, and it was maybe intercepted on the 3-yard line, I think, something like that, 3 or 4 yard line. So you just got to be very, very careful about throwing a ball that lateral near the goal line. I say lateral, it was thrown down the field, but it was thrown a long distance, even though it wasn't that far from the line of scrimmage when the ball came down. It's a dangerous throw. You do not put the ball out there late.
Don, I made the same comment right after it happened. I thought, man, he's throwing the ball toward the wide side of the field on a goal line situation. Why was that play? It was a bad decision, but why was the play called?
Well, I don't really know for sure how the play was supposed to unfold. Maybe it somehow unfolded a little bit differently than what it was supposed to. But the bottom line, you got to be very careful about making those throws to the front of the end zone, even if you're on the 5-yard line. It's such a lateral throw, and it's in the arrow line if it's to the wide field. And let's face it, the corner has no place left to defend hardly. So right. Is it any wonder that he might be able to undercut that throw?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what you saw.
The only thing I would say is Jake Butt on the coverage basically said, and this is why I tweeted that. He said on that play, you should be sitting your butt on the goal line. He said, I don't know why he stopped at the 2-yard line. That's what he said in the coverage of the game. He said you should be sitting his butt on the goal line rather than short of the goal line. That's the only reason that I tweeted that. He was talking about the receiver, Jake Butt.
Jake Butt said what?
That the receiver should have been sitting on the goal line, not on the 2-yard line.
Okay.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was maybe, well, let's see. I think there were 18 seconds left. Does that sound right?
Yes, it was right before the half. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think we had one timeout. So realistically, we might only get a couple of plays. Maybe that was a 3rd down play. I don't recall. Those are all arguments, as Jake said. Of course, he played tight end. Why wouldn't you be on or across the goal line with a chance to make the play count? If you catch it on the 3-yard line, you got to have to snap it again anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly how it all unfolded because all I have to go by is what I actually saw with my eyes. I don't even have the benefit of a replay, so I don't know what the TV showed, but Jake had to be in good position to make an accurate read on what he saw.
And he made that comment, OS for Hawks, about when Jake Butt made the comment about how the receiver's butt needed to be on the goal line. No pun intended with that, right? He wasn't trying to be funny.
Yeah, no, he would just say that the receiver in that situation, in that route, he should have been on the goal line, not 2 yards short. That's basically what I said. And that's enough. I just wanted to say, I think one of the reasons that Iowa won today was because of how well the offensive line performed today. I mean, run blocking, pass blocking, Deacon had so much more time today than he's had in any other game. And I think you can see that on what happened on the performance on the field. I think he was able to hit some receivers. Granted, there was a couple of throws, the interception, and the one throw to Estringa that actually was completed. I don't think that Deacon should have thrown either. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say, I said the linebackers continue to impress me. We lost Jack Campbell, and Higgins just impressed me, and so does Jackson. But Higgins just, it's like Jack's still there, and I just wanted to say that. And I wanted to say one thing, and I like the earlier caller that said that we need to say a thank you to both Kirk and Brian Ferentz, and he's right. We have been blessed with a couple of great coaches over the last 40 years, almost 50 years, I guess. And we've had great football played here at the University of Iowa. And I just wanted to say kudos for Kurt Ferentz. I think nobody more than him deserves to go ahead of Bo Schembechler, for the number of wins. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is we also have 3 great running backs. They do different things, but they all perform. And I think they performed today because the offensive line performed. And I always talk about the offensive line because I'm one of the old wide bodies that used to be up front. I played center when I played football. So I always kind of have to give a shout out to the offensive line if they do well or if they don't. Again, Cory, Don, thank you so much for your shows. I appreciate it so much, and I'm glad you took my call. I'm getting a little tired of being at the end of the show all the time, though.
Man,
I'm just kidding, Cory. Just
you're in the queue, my brother. You're gonna have to log on like 30 minutes early. You're gonna have to skip the 4th quarter just so you can be here early.
Yeah, but I watched the game first. What do you want me to log on and get into the queue before the game's over?
That's exactly what I want you to do.
I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. So I guess I'm going to have to live with where I'm at. Again, Thank you guys so much for your shows. I appreciate the time. Go Hawks.
Appreciate it. Go Hawks. And as I put up on the banner here, if anybody is not following me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you can do so at From the Hawkeye on both Twitter and Instagram. And let's see here. I don't think Mark would mind me sharing this. Mark Rogers just sent me a text. He said, I look forward to talking to you about this team on Tuesday. They seem to have made some meaningful progress on offense. Interesting coming from Mark. Mark's been very critical of Iowa, and rightfully so. The other thing about Mark, Don, is he's fresh off watching this Rutgers team play Ohio State tough, and Ohio State struggled to score and move the ball against Ohio State. How many total? You want to guess, Don? I'm going to pull it up here. But as I'm pulling it up, can you please guess how many total yards Ohio State had against Rutgers last week? Maybe you know the answer to that.
326.
Is that really the answer?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not going to look it up.
That's my recall.
I'm not going to look it up if you already did.
That's my recall.
Okay. Well,
Rutgers had 361. And Ohio State had 326. I could be wrong, but I do have a good capacity to remember numbers.
Rutgers had 326 or Ohio State had 326?
Ohio State had 326. Rutgers outgained them. Rutgers outrushed them. Rutgers had more total offense also.
So Iowa actually produced more yardage against Rutgers than Ohio State did last week. And
yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting. To become a premium subscriber here at the channel, click the join button, the little blue button next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm, and you'll get a few little perks as we go along here. And I'm continuing to try to work at figuring out more ways to serve our premium members. Kind of running a one-man operation, 8 months out of it? Well, less than that, because, of course, Coach Close is with us throughout the off-season as well. We only get Coach Patterson for like 3.5 months. So, I want to give as many perks to our premium subscribers as possible, but you can join by clicking that little blue button. Clayton is waiting on hold, but Clayton, I don't have audio for you. It says your device is not connected, so I can't bring you in. Oh, here comes Clayton. I think he got in. Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Let's see if we can add Clayton to the mix. Clayton, can you hear me?
Hey, you got me, Cory?
I got you loud and clear, sir.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I will say that the analytics today for offense, oh my gosh, like it's unbelievable, because we were looking at 50% third down conversions, 9 for 18, I think, which is fantastic, looking at where we're at. And I think we were 2 for 2 for fourth down. So it's hard to say that the offense did not do their job today. I just, I'm at a loss right now, because, Rutgers is an excellent defense. I think everyone can agree on that. And we come off of Northwestern, which is obviously less of a defense than Northwestern, and look at what we do. So I'm kind of wondering what happened in the locker room to drive what happened tonight. Do you have any input on that?
Don, do you think this type of a turnaround with offense, one game example, do you think that's an indication that something happened in the locker room, or is this just sometimes things click at a certain time? And is it too small of a sample size to even make that conclusion?
Yeah, I think it's really unexplainable sometimes how the outcome can be so different from one week to the next. So we just need to follow this up with a similar performance against Illinois. And if we do that, then maybe it does tie into something that happened week in the locker room, perhaps. I don't think that happened, but I could be wrong. No way to know unless you check with the players.
And Cory, I think Deacon played a good game tonight. I don't think anyone would say it was great, but obviously his mistakes were less than what they have been. He made, obviously the interception was a mistake. There was one time that I noticed he was flushed out of the pocket, and instead of, keeping going out of the pocket, he just turned back into the pocket and got sacked. I thought, well, probably should have kept going that direction. But he made a couple decisions that were questionable. But I think by and large, I mean, he played a pretty solid game given what we've had the last 6 to 8 weeks.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think he still has a lot of work to do, a lot of room to grow, Don, as it relates to his internal clock in the pocket. There was at least one throw. He made a completion. I believe it was to Addison Estringle. I'll have to look back at it. It was a pass toward the middle of the field, and his clock should have went off sooner. And it was fortunate that a pass rusher didn't get to him a split second sooner, because he probably would have stripped him again. The other thing I've noticed with Deacon Hill, to nitpick a little bit, now granted, he's probably not quite as tall as like a Nate Stanley was, but does it seem like his balls get tipped at the line a lot? And and because of the velocity with these throws, the ball shoots straight up in the air, and we're fortunate that hasn't burned.
Yeah, that tip pass today could have come down in some defender's hands, because it was up in the air a long time.
So is there something? How do you correct that? Is there a way to correct that other than just helping a quarterback to be aware of timing and knowing when a defensive lineman is typically going to try and get up for a tip pass? Or how do you teach that? How do you fix that?
Well, you just have to have an awareness of where the throwing lanes are. One thing that I do notice, even if you're in the gun, there's nothing wrong with making slight adjustments with your feet. So often you see Deacon, he just puts his feet firmly on the ground and doesn't even move for a period of time. If he takes a snap in the gun, it's going to be a short throw. It's not even as if he's, lightly patting his feet even. And, if you're in that position and you just hold that position for a while, then obviously can you still hear me, Cory?
I got you. Yep, I got you.
Okay. Because I lost my video somehow. I have to ask my wife I bumped it somehow. I don't have any picture on my screen, but I guess if you stand with your feet in the ground and you're lined up to throw a certain direction, of course, the pass rush can read that you're based on where you're sitting with your feet and with your shoulders. The likely path of the ball would be right through this area, and of course, as the tenths of seconds tick off, it's entirely possible that they work their way into what they anticipate to be the throwing lane. I think that does happen sometimes. And of course, if they have a chance to get a hand up, they can't get to you, but they understand if I can't get to the quarterback, the next best thing is for me to get a hand up in what I see as the throwing lane. I think you saw that today.
And I will add one thing, Cory. I'm really glad that we played Rutgers tonight because I live in Wisconsin and I'm 70 miles from the border of Minnesota. I work with a lot of Nebraska fans and I spend a lot of time in Ames for work. So nobody that I know is a Rutgers fan, so I don't have any problems this week with any flack. So that's the good news.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know any Rutgers fans myself. So, and I'm in Ames all the time. So, anything else, Clayton? Appreciate you calling in and being a part of this.
I appreciate you guys' time and go Hawks. I think that today looks to me like a step forward. I hope it carries into next week. I don't see the Illinois quarterback having the same success as he did today, but time will tell.
Big difference between the Indiana defense and the Iowa defense. Thank you for the call, Clayton.
Thanks, Cory.
Don, I'm gonna kick you on out of here, and that way you can fix your video. I want you to be able to see us.
I can see you now. You're back.
Oh, you got it back.
Yeah.
Look at you. I'm gonna hire you as my IT guy. Can you take care of all my behind the scenes technology stuff, Don?
I just consider myself lucky to have hit the right button. I'm not really sure. It was just a guess on my part.
Okay. Steve Peterson in the chat. Will Vines be back soon? We don't know. Doesn't sound like there was an official injury report given to the media after the game. I'm sure we'll get some updates on Tuesday, official updates on Tuesday. And Finn, what do you think Don does all week? What do I think Don does all week? Well, he spends a lot of time on analytics.
That's true.
In the summertime, you like to golf.
Yep.
You like to eat those little pecan tarts from Walmart, right?
I do. I can highly recommend them.
And let me give a plug to one more product, Don, that Don really likes. And I have not yet went to the store, but Don, I've got it written down just so you know I haven't forgotten about that conversation. Sister Schubert's dinner yeast rolls. Right?
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, Cory, I'll just let it go at this and you can fill in the blanks. I was introduced to a wonderful loaded baked potato by my daughter, Brooke, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I think you know where I found it.
I know exactly where you... It's funny you said that. And we won't say it on the air, Don, but I have got a baked potato from the place that you're talking about in my refrigerator waiting for me to end this show right now. Now, it's not loaded. It's not loaded, but I've had the loaded baked potato there, and it is scrumptious. Let me just say that. So,
yeah,
anyways.
if I really want to pique everyone's interest, I think it costs, even if it's a loaded version, it costs about $4, I think. It's worth every penny of it.
It's very, very good. Cup it with some chili, and you got yourself a beautiful winter meal.
I passed on the chili, but I did recall that you gave the chili high marks too.
Very high marks. We'll have to bring them on as a sponsor, Don, and then I can really put a plug in for them from the heart. Cameron, appreciate the comment. Thank you all for the show every week. Really appreciate it. And we appreciate you, Cameron, for being here. And Lisa, same thing. Thank you, Lisa, for being here. We love you too, Lisa. We appreciate you being a part of the Hawkeye fandom and being a part of this show. I've seen you on here a lot recently, so appreciate you and your always positive comments. So thank you, Lisa. Also, let me see. There was one more comment before we got to our next caller I wanted to hit. Well, D Hollywood, thank you for the super chat, D. Appreciate the donation. And your way of supporting the show. Lamansky adding in with the super chat. If we are family, reward backups if possible. We might get Kate injured. Oh, that happened. Scout team works hard too. So Lamansky's clearly an advocate for playing younger guys if the opportunity comes. And you could argue that they could have put in Marco Lainez or even a Joe Labus. I would have thought they would have went with Lainez late. Again, they can't burn his red shirt at this point, so why not play him? And Eric with the super chat, one good game doesn't make up for years of futility. Sorry, Brian. Good luck in your future endeavors. I have seen some people earlier in the chat, Don, what a mistake it was to fire Brian. I'll just comment on that. I think let's remember that that is the epitome of living in the moment. This is one game. Compare it to the sample size that is the last how many years. Let's pump the brakes on the fire Beth Getz stuff. I know those people are in the minority, but I would agree that I'm happy for Brian to have a performance with his unit this week like he had, and I hope he has great performances these last 2 weeks. In my opinion, that in no way changes where I stand about his future with Iowa. Now, the argument that maybe they could have utilized him somewhere else, I think that ship sailed when you continue to elevate him and promote. You're not going to demote the guy. He's probably not going to take a big pay cut to go to a lesser position on the team. He'd probably rather do that at the NFL level or somewhere else. That's my 2 cents on it. But I do think he'll be an adequate coach somewhere. I've said that. I think he knows how to coach tight ends. I think he knows something about the offensive line. He probably knows a lot about the run game, Don. And frankly, in hindsight, this can be a conversation for a different day. 2 years ago, maybe this whole thing would have been different had they not went the direction they did with quarterbacks coach, made Brian the run game coordinator, and promoted somebody who was more familiar with the passing game and quarterback play, and have those two guys work hand in hand. But we'll never know because that's not what's happening. Danimal with the super chat. Thanks for the show every week, Coach and Cory. Glad to see Deacon have a mostly fine game. Thank you for the super chat, Danimal. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got Randy on hold. Randy, welcome.
Hey, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, Randy. I have a problem, though.
Randy.
You are using an Android or a Google phone or browser, and they're having an issue with echoing right now. So I'm going to mute you just for a second. Do you have earphones that you can grab and add into this? You do not. Are you able to call in on a different device, perhaps?
I don't have a different device to call in on.
Okay. It's a really strong echo, and it's a StreamYard issue. So if you're able to call in by phone real quick, and I'll throw you to the front of the line. But it's just every time I speak, I hear a really strong echo. So are you able to call in by phone real quick?
Yeah, I could.
Okay. All right. Give me a call real quick, 515-635-1601, Randy, and we'll get you on. Thank you, sir. All right. I know Randy's been waiting on hold for a while, so if we get him in the phone line, we're going to move him to the front. So we'll see if we can do that. Again, thank you for the super chat, Danimal and Brody. Appreciate the super chat as well. Bacon fried up a whole pound tonight. Caleb Brown is an absolute stud. Glad to see him shining. Thought he might be player of the week given his circumstances. And Don, it is a fair question to ask what took so long to get this guy going, to get Caleb Brown going. And I don't know that I have an answer to that question, but what I can say is that I'm happy for him now. And I hope that this is an indication of things to come. And hopefully, as the passing game continues to progress in years to come, he will be a part of that because he's got raw talent, and he demonstrated that with some soft hands and nice plays out of the backfield. And just overall, it seems like that pass play that got them in scoring position last week against Northwestern maybe gave him a little bit of a boost.
I think you're right. One thing that appears to be obvious to me is that he has more potential after the catch than the average receiver. And the only reason I bring it up that way, that's an argument for getting him the ball in space, even if it's behind the line of scrimmage, either behind or slightly downfield. Let's just get the ball in his hands in space, give him a chance to do something with it, because it appears he is above average after the catch, and we need to give him a chance to prove that up ahead.
All right, I think we got Randy back on the line. Randy, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, StreamYard's having a big issue with Google this week, and I know they're trying to get that resolved, but Android and Chrome are having issues. So apologize for the wait, but I appreciate you calling me via phone.
Yeah, not a problem. So I wanted to salute the military too. I just found out yesterday that my oldest son is going to be shipped off to Kosovo next month. So that'll be his first deployment. So hats off to all the military personnel out there.
Well, I wish your son the safest endeavors and be thinking about you as well, Randy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was good to see some actual offense. I thought we were going to, for a few minutes, we were going to have a 0-0 score going into halftime again. What's the odds of having a 0-0 score 2 weeks in a row in a football game going into halftime?
Well, not a lot of difference between 0-0 and 3-0, but I will say this.
No.
My 9-7, that was my prediction pregame, Don, was 9-7 Iowa. What was it, late in the third quarter? What was the score heading into the fourth, Don? Was it 6-0?
I can't remember.
Let me pull this up here.
I think you're right, because I remember the touchdowns were both on the north end, right, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was 6-0 heading into the fourth, and I thought, hey, my prediction could easily pan out. Iowa gets one more field goal, then Rutgers tacks on a garbage touchdown, 9-7, but it wasn't to be a 16-point fourth quarter for the Hawks. And by the way, real quick, just the 2-point conversion that was called back. I'm tired of
that was good.
Well, first of all, I'm tired of Randy. You're right, and I'm tired of officials not sticking to the letter of the law. And I don't care. Maybe I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I don't care what Dean Blandino said on the broadcast during the review of that play. There is no way you can tell me that he conclusively had a knee or shin down. There's no way you can say that. I don't care what angles you're looking at. There is no conceivable way you can say that's conclusive. And I have a real problem with that, Don. This rule about calling the field has to be conclusive to overturn it. I don't see officials doing that more often than not. When it's obvious, it's easy to fall back on that. Well, it's got to be conclusive. That was almost conclusive the opposite way. But when it's in doubt, I see officials more often than not, it seems like, Don, going with their gut as opposed to going with the letter of the law, which is it has to be conclusive. You go back and watch that play with Caleb Brown. There's no way you can say with 100% definity that his knee or shin was down. There's just no way you can say that.
I was curious, at least in the stadium, no one ever showed a shot right down the goal line. The angles weren't good, the replays that we saw in the stadium. I was curious, was there a replay that was looking right down the goal line?
I don't know about.
There was.
I think there was. I don't know that I'd say right down the goal line. I think the big thing is the way his leg moved as he was turning into the end zone for that 2-point conversion. It's clear that the shin got close to touching the ground. Whether or not it did, we don't know. But then the knee came back up. It clearly was off the ground when he crossed. So it really doesn't matter where his knee was when he crossed. The question is, did it ever touch the ground prior to that point? And I'm just simply saying there's just no way, when you go back and watch that, Don, there's no way you can say with certainty that it touched. And if it did, it grazed grass.
Yeah.
So I had a problem with that because that seems to be an issue with – we've seen a lot of blunders, Don, not just the Minnesota game, but I know people here in Ames are frustrated with how the Kansas-Iowa State game was officiated. You probably saw Jalen Knoll was called back. Well, excuse me, he wasn't called back. He was called out of bounds on a punt return that was taken back for a touchdown. Replay, a different view of that play later showed that he never stepped out of bounds. And the problem, when an official makes that call in that moment – is you can't call it back to review because you blew the play dead. So naturally, like the Jack Campbell play with our friend Tim O'Day a year ago against Minnesota, you let the play run its course, and then look at it later. All right? Look at it later. I don't know if officiating has gotten worse or if I've just gotten more irritable as it relates to the Zebras, Don, but it just seems like we're seeing more and more of these issues where officials are not consistent, are not sticking to the letter of the law as it relates to replay, and certainly not letting plays play out. And that's, especially when you're talking about a potential touchdown on a punt return or a pick six or something, you better let that play run out if there's any doubt.
Right.
All right. Sorry, that's my tangent, Randy. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm fully with you on that. The whole replay, it needs to be for something that's clearly obvious that they missed, rather than, oh, that's pretty close. Yeah,
correct.
I think they've got to go after the more obvious and let that play stand.
And the bottom line is you gotta put the shoe on the other foot there and look at it from the other direction. Had the call been made at the and of course the spot didn't end up mattering because they won 22-0. But if that call had been made that he was down at the half-inch yard line, I'd be saying the same thing. It should not have been overturned. That's what inconclusive means. The fact of the matter is, it was called a touchdown on the field. You stick with the call on the field. But
yeah, one of the biggest questions I have for Don is this about the rhythm of the offense for a quarterback. It feels like we just don't have an offense that has a really good rhythm to it. And today we turn around and we're moving down the field, and he was hitting receivers one after another and getting first downs. And is it an offensive scheme thing? Are we taking guys that are just slinging the ball around all the time when they're in high school, and then we're asking them to slow the roll a little bit too much, and then they tighten up and are not feeling comfortable because they're not throwing it? Well,
one thing I really felt happened today, I give credit to Deacon. In the past, I don't think I've said this on the air, but Cory, I think I've mentioned it to you maybe off the air. I think Deacon at times in the past has been a thrower, but not a passer. Hope that makes sense to you. And primarily the difference in the two is that a passer understands that there are times when you don't throw a fastball. There are times when you take something off the throw. Maybe you need to do it because you need to loft the ball over a defender. You saw that a week ago when we converted to jersey number 81, right? The 23-yard gain. That was a ball that required touch. He lofted the ball pretty much directly over the underneath coverage and into the hands of Caleb, and it was a key play, of course. It set up the game-winning field goal. Today, the thing I noticed, and a lot of those drive routes, or what you might think of as a crossing route off of play action, they had man coverage, and the coverage was in hot pursuit. And if we had thrown the ball a little bit on our receiver's backside, it might have even been intercepted or at least broken up. But what I saw a few times is a ball that showed less than full velocity, but it was on target. And it made for an easier catch. The ball didn't go zipping off someone's fingertips and up in the air. We had maybe one or two of those, but in general, the ball was fielded. And I think the receivers as a group would tell you today, Deacon gave us more balls that were more easily catchable. He demonstrated touch. That's a good thing because he's learning from week to week about how to become a better quarterback. So that was a really positive thing I saw today is Deacon demonstrated more touch on his throws. Not everything was a fastball. That's a good sign because he's getting better with each and every passing week.
Yeah, hopefully we see some more of that next week. I'll be headed out to the game next week, so hopefully we have some more offense. And it's just a sign of things to come, hopefully.
Yep.
I was getting a little bit anxious when the mention was to have more offense, and I'm thinking we had 405 yards. Now I am nervous because I don't know if we can put up 405 next weekend. Maybe. We'll try.
Yeah. All right. I thank you guys for everything you do.
Thank you, Randy. We appreciate you and your support, sir.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. I thank you guys for
Real quick, I just was going to look here. So it's 402, Don. The number is 402.
Today?
402. Yep.
402. Good.
So
That's an impressive number. That I don't even know. Did we take a knee once or twice at the end of the game? The only reason I ask is I will admit we left our seats with about a minute on the clock because I wanted to see every last snap, but I wanted to see it from the portal. I didn't want to get in my row, having to get hung up with many more fans, and I didn't want to have to be that late to your show, Cory. That's why we left our seats with a little bit of time on the clock.
Okay, we still got a lot of people here waiting to jump on, and we've got a couple of comments in the chat to get to. John wants to know if this team were 9-1, are they ranked in the top 6? No, not a chance. Not a chance. Now, would they be able to work their way into the top 4? They would have to win out, and that's why I said the only way they could conceivably get in. I know Tom talked about all these teams losing. I think the only way they could possibly get in is if the committee set a precedent and went out on a limb and said, we believe this team is actually 12-1. That call was unprecedented against Minnesota. This team deserves to be 12-1. They're Big Ten champions. That would be the only way they get in. They're not going to be looked at as a 2-loss entry into the playoff, not as a 4-team playoff. If it's a 12-team playoff, then sure, they'd be in the mix. Big Bolivar, like button, hit it, folks. Absolutely. Please do that. BJ with some, I don't want to say criticism, but reality check. He says, same thing happened after the whiskey game. Thought our offense was better and then crapped the bet against Minnesota. The run game was better against Wisconsin, Don. We have not seen the advancement of the passing game until today. There is a difference with what we've seen in those two games, but it is fair. And you brought up the seeming progress in 2017 against, well, I shouldn't say progress because they actually had a decent passing game in 2017. But what they did against Ohio State in 2017, followed up by an egg at Wisconsin the next week. One good win, one good performance does not guarantee longevity in those categories moving forward. So that is a fair criticism.
The challenge is to show consistency from one week to the next. If you don't do that, then you don't deserve to be a championship team. You got to be consistent with what you do.
Right. Scott says, great game, Cory and Don. Thanks for all you guys do. 47 years as a Hawk fan here. Appreciate that, Scott. Thank you for being here. D. Rolifson. Glad Brian is debuting his new look offense with 400 plus. Hope that's the new offense. Hope that's the new norm moving forward for Brian and this offense through his career. Thank you, D. Rolifson. Pete. Kirk Ferentz worth every dollar. Phil Parker needs a $250,000 raise. Coach Patterson is priceless. Blessed with so many great coaches over the years and players too.
Thank you, Pete. I'm humbled by your comment. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Pete, for the super chat. M. Finn says, I use Sister Schubert's rolls all the time. So that's good news. And Circle Herc says, is it true that when Coach Patterson lifts dumbbells, he makes them smarter?
I don't even know how to respond to that.
Of course, if Circle Herc's asking the question, then the obvious answer, yes, absolutely, it's true. Okay, let's go back to our phone line. I believe, let's see. We've got our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Before we get to our next caller, I do want to take a moment. We're recapping Iowa's 22-0 win over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, but I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines. If you need a quote on insurance, and it never hurts to get a quote, certainly, see if Brad and his team can save you money. They're down at State Farm on Fleur Drive in Des Moines, 4229 Fleur Drive. Visit Brad online at bradvanmeter.com. You can also give them a call, 515-256-6480. They're spending countless hours on their customers, checking annually to make sure that they're taking care of you and your needs and reviewing coverages regularly. They've got 3 fully licensed team members to help you navigate through the complex world that is insurance. Give Brad and his team a call. Brad has been a proud supporter of the show here for quite some time. We appreciate Brad. Please show your appreciation by talking to Brad about how he can serve you and your family better with insurance. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got Erica on the line. Erica, welcome.
Hi, good evening. How's it going?
Going great, Erica. How are you?
I'm very happy today, actually, for a change. I'm not calling in to criticize anything. I'm I wanted to ask a question though. I've gotten into a debate with someone that I believe you know, Cory. I'm not going to mention the person's name out of respect. It's not an Iowa fan; it's another fan base. But we were going back and forth on Twitter because, of course, it's Twitter. You know, that's what people do on Twitter.
Right.
We were going back and forth. They said that Rutgers crapped the bed against us tonight, and I think that is trash. I think that the fact that we've beaten Rutgers 9 out of the last 11 times means that Iowa's dominant. I don't think that Rutgers crapped the bed. I think we were the better team. So I just wanted to get your opinions on that.
What do you think about that, Don? How much of this? I mean, how would you evaluate Rutgers after getting shut out 22-0?
I heard Greg Schiano's press conference, and in so many ways he said that. He said, we're simply not in a league with Iowa yet, because we didn't respond well, and they put a lot of pressure on us with what they did, and they were clearly the better team. That was a dominant performance. The score, if anything, was a little bit misleading. We should have beaten them worse than 22.
Well, the 2-point conversion should have been good, and they should have gotten points at the end of the first half.
And the missed field goal. Could have been 30 then based on that, right?
And honestly, that's the coach's fault for not taking a 5-yard delay game penalty and giving Drew a kick from 50+, right? Shouldn't have had him kick from 47, Don.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, they shouldn't have gotten, was it 6 false starts that Rutgers got? You can't tell me that they crapped the bed if they got 6 false starts. That is just garbage.
Well, part of that is, no question about it. The crowd. How much of an effect does the crowd have, Don? You've coached offense for many years. How much of an effect does the crowd have in that situation?
I think in rare cases, the crowd has a significant effect on the game. I think today was one of those cases. Let's face it, most of those false starts came in the first half when the game was very much in doubt.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe when that person said that. I just thought it was horrible, just not true. I mean, we've beaten Rutgers more times than not. So that to me doesn't mean they crapped the bed. That just means in general we're the better team, and we definitely were the better team today.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
there was no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that. They got 0 points. And the other thing I wanted to ask about too, and I'm just asking this because I don't know a ton about Rutgers except the fact that we tend to beat them. Apparently their defense is good. I don't think we made them look very good today. And I acknowledge that Xavier Wampa knocked out their best defender, or one of their best defenders, but
I mean, the numbers suggest that Iowa's offense heading into tonight was the worst offense in FBS.
Right.
So the fact that Rutgers gave up over 400 total yards to Iowa offensively, and Iowa hasn't done that for 3 seasons. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Schiano, being a defensive-minded guy, Don, is probably not real happy with his guys.
He did make one comment. The fact that they couldn't stay on the field offensively, he commented that the defense just had way too many snaps and couldn't get off the field. And all you have to do is reflect back on our game against Penn State. The shoe was on our foot that night. Very much like the shoe was on Rutgers' foot today.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
They got worn down.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask, and if you guys don't want to answer this, that's fine. I understand. I wanted to get your opinions on the whole Michigan stuff, all that stuff that's happening over there in Ann Arbor.
Well, I hope Michigan loses every game the rest of the way. I don't care who. I wish nothing badly on players, but the fact of the matter is there's no place in the game for cheating, and that's what has been. I know that there's a claim against due process. Due process has not been given to Michigan and to Jim Harbaugh. It sounds like there's some really strong evidence regarding these allegations, and the Big Ten decided to make the decision that it did. I have never liked Michigan. This makes me like Michigan less. Never really liked Jim Harbaugh. I'm sorry, Leo. He's in our queue. We're going to bring Leo in here in a second. I hope they lose every game the rest of the way. I really do, and it's nothing about the players or the fans. But frankly, I'm getting tired of hearing about the story, Don. That's maybe my biggest thing. I'm getting about as tired of hearing about the story as I was hearing about Coach Prime heading into the year. Don, do you have anything on the sign stealing stuff?
Well, yesterday at a luncheon, the question came up about all of that, and my response like this. I had to present by saying, when I was so believe me, I'm all about fair play, and anybody that cheats deserves a severe penalty. So I simply made this comment: if I were in charge of the NCAA and Michigan was able to go 13-0, I would pick up the phone and call them and congratulate them on an outstanding season. And in my next breath, I would tell them, you are not part of the Final Four. And it's all because you violated the rules of the game, and you've done so, and you deserve to pay a severe penalty for what you've done.
Right. Right. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I understand the due process argument. I was saying that until, frankly, I just got kind of tired of hearing about it. Now I'm more on the fence of like, or on the side of like, they need to be reprimanded for this and punished for this. So I don't know. I was trying to be fair about it and the due process stuff, because I do believe, innocent till proven guilty and all that. But honestly, they've proven that Connor Stallions, or whatever his name is, did do something.
Can I throw in a simple illustration, because illustrations teach? For anybody complaining about how, well, Jim Harbaugh, he shouldn't be suspended for the game. Here's the problem, Don. Here's the problem. Someone is accused of a crime. Listen, when someone is accused of a crime, the police don't wait to arrest him until he's found guilty, right? That's not how this works. So the allegations are made. They have strong evidence. They've decided to suspend him. Due process will occur. And guess what? If Michigan wants to go back and litigate the Big Ten, they can do that. It sounds like that's what they're planning on doing. Just like if somebody's wrongfully imprisoned and they lose out on months and months of work and life experience and life quality, then they can go back and sue. But this is what due process is. I don't want to hear this garbage about how, well, we haven't been proven yet, so they should be able to just play out the rest of the season and then we can discuss it later. No, we're talking about quality of the game here. We're talking about innocent until proven guilty and due process. This is how it works, whether you like it or not.
Well, we're talking about ethics here. It's not just about due process. It's ethics. You know?
Yeah, it is. Integrity of the game. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I also, to sort of say something along the same lines that you were, Cory, that you're just tired of hearing about it. I'm also tired of hearing about it. And the other thing I'm tired of hearing about is that Michigan fans are now threatening to join the SEC, like to leave the Big Ten and join the SEC. Isn't that ridiculous?
Bye-bye.
Exactly.
Bye-bye.
Exactly.
Don't care.
And I don't know. I was trying really hard to, be calm about it and all that, but I've heard about it a few too many times. I'm tired of hearing them talk about this Michigan against the world stuff. I just think that's so crazy and ridiculous to think so highly of yourself that it's you against the world. Like, come on. Like, cry me a river already.
If I was the Big Ten, you know what I would do if I was the Big Ten, Erica?
Get them out?
I would say, you're going to threaten us to go to the SEC? I would, I don't know what the contract stipulations between the university and the Big Ten are, but I would dare them to make that move. With all the money that's on the table right now in the Big Ten, I would dare them to make that move. They'll never make that move.
That's right.
So anyways.
So Big Bolivar is complaining about us talking about this, so I'll finish with something a bit more humorous and Hawk related. Given tonight's win, Don, where's your cowboy hat?
I misplaced it all over again.
My goodness, seriously, again?
I could get mine out. You want me to get mine out, Erica?
Sure, why not? And then also next time you see Don, because I imagine you see him in person, you can give him the hat and have him wear it next time.
That's a good heads up for me to be sure that Cory doesn't drop in on me with a box under his arm, because he might have a cowboy hat in it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Well, I was also watching. Oh my goodness, there he is.
We are back, Don.
Cory, the guy that wears the black hat, isn't that the bad guy always?
Doesn't Kenny Chesney wear the black hat?
Oh, goodness.
You're right. Typically it's the bad guy, right? I should have went brown, but
well, he went black because it's Hawks.
That's right. Back in black, Don.
Obviously. I don't know, Cory, did you hear what I said? You need to, next time you see Don, bring it to him and let him wear it the next time.
Don, you've got to have a cowboy hat, don't you? We've talked
No.
about this before.
I was not born in West Texas. I was born in East Texas.
Bro, I don't know what difference that makes. I'm not from Texas. I have no idea.
Well, if you're born in West Texas, you might need to wear a cowboy hat.
But you also coached in Denton, Don. You coached near the stock, within driving distance of the stockyard. So there's no reason why you don't have. There's no real good reason. And you coached under a cowboy in Hayden Fry.
That's true.
I'm trying to think if I ever saw Hayden wear a cowboy hat.
Yeah, he wasn't really a cowboy hat either guy.
No.
Either.
Yeah, he liked his sunglasses. I think that was his thing, not so much the cowboy hat.
They do refer to Fort Worth as where the West begins. That's true. But Denton is not exactly aligned with Fort Worth. Denton's a little bit north and east, I think.
Yeah, I know, but it's driving distance. You go down to the stockyards and spend the afternoon, and yeah.
Anyway, well, I'm glad that we won today. I also find it amusing that people are saying in the chat today, or tonight, that we shouldn't have fired Brian, and and I'm just like, you can't take it back. Number one, number two, like, he had one good game, which I'm very happy about. Don't get me wrong, but it needs to be a consistent thing.
Yeah, one example does not prove anything other than good job.
Yeah, see right there, Brian S. Rehire Brian. Nah. No.
They're not rehiring Brian.
They're not rehiring Brian.
I do think it's worth exploring the idea, Erica, of from the Hawkeye of the Storm shirts that say rehire Brian.
Brian S. here in the chat's already ahead of you. He said that like an hour ago.
I know. I saw it. I'm just.
Did you see? Yeah. I don't know if you saw my comment back to him. I said, I don't think you're going to sell many T-shirts.
Well, we'll see. I'd like to go down that road and experience it.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyway, well, thank you again for taking the call, and
okay,
go Hawks.
Appreciate it. Go Hawks. Absolutely. And Cub Hawk 1237. Did Beth make a mistake saying Brian won't be back in any capacity? I think he'd be great as an assistant head coach, co-offensive line coach. He bleeds black and gold. I don't think Beth made any mistake. I'll say that. I don't think she made any mistake. I think it was the obvious decision that probably should have been made a long time ago by Beth Getz's predecessor. And that predecessor put Beth Getz in a really awkward situation and position. And she made the right decision at the right time. Had things not been allowed to continue as they were and the situation enabled for so long, maybe Brian could have flourished here as a position coach, but that was not the projection. That was not the goal. And sometimes things backfire, and that's what's happened. Don Stewart wants to know, do you have any more metrics for ensuring a kitten is born?
Well, you know what? I'm more of a dog person. I'm sorry. I don't have much history at all with kittens or cats.
Steve says, any chance getting Anthony Herrera off the Big Night? What is? Oh, Anthony. Okay, that's a typo. Any chance getting Anthony Herron off the Big Ten Network on your show? Would love to get Anthony Herron on. Don, did you recruit Anthony?
I didn't personally recruit him. I know Anthony pretty well because he played for us. And he's done an outstanding job with Big Ten Network. And my guess is, Cory, I don't know that I have a phone number for him, but I would bet he went through the Big Ten Network and put a message toward him that you'd like to invite him to do our show. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't even mind if you mentioned, oh, by the way, Coach P is on the show. I would be willing to bet you that he would make time to do it.
Yeah, I'd like to get Anthony on there. I did think it was an interesting interaction between him and Jay Lehman. Both were really good Big Ten players in their own right, early 2000s. But what I thought was interesting is at halftime, it was 3-0. So Iowa hadn't exploded offensively yet. And Anthony Herron was talking about how impressive it was that Iowa was moving the ball as well as they were, in spite of the fact that they're dealing with all these injuries. And Jay Lehman kind of checked Anthony, and he said, everyone's dealing with injuries at this point in the season. And I thought it was a very, very good point that Jay Lehman made, because give credit where credit is due. The offense looked great, but I don't want to hear about this. Well, they're doing it in spite of all these problems and all this turmoil, Don. Everybody's dealing with injuries. Yes, they've lost Cade, they've lost Lachey and Eric All, but that's football. This happens every year to almost every team. Some years are worse than others, but this is part of the game.
Football is a war of attrition.
Right.
And in general, teams are all hit with the injury bug. Not the same, but in a similar way. I'll say it that way.
Jason wants to know, how would Phil Parker's defense translate to the NFL? Any thoughts on that, Don? I know you never coached in the league, but do you think that'd ever be a consideration for Phil Parker, something that could tantalize him, tempt him to leave?
Believe me, I don't study the NFL like I study college football, so I'm not as much of an expert about the NFL. If I watch a Sunday game, it's probably because a former player that I know well is playing in the game. I'm simply watching to see how he's doing. So I don't really study it from a strategy standpoint. It's hard for me to imagine that somebody like Phil, that I'm sure they probably play more man coverage in the NFL, I believe they do, than in college. And of course, Phil would prefer to play zone concepts, and that's worked well for us. So in that regard, he might be forced to play more man in the pros. And yet he's such an outstanding teacher. I don't have any doubt that he could be successful if he ever chose to coach in the NFL. I think he'd certainly be able to make that transition.
Lamansky says, if the season ends today, is Ferentz Big Ten Coach of the Year?
You know, to be honest with you, if I had a vote, I'd probably still favor voting for the Northwestern coach. I think the job he's done, Kirk's done a great job this year. My guess is an impartial observer would say what's even been more out of the ordinary is the success that this young man has had becoming the head coach in the summertime after a beloved head coach was removed from duty. They've won 5 games right now. Is that right? Chance to be bowl eligible? They won 5 or 4?
I think they're at 5.
5, yeah. That's amazing.
It is. And Stacy says, I wonder how much the Ohio State game took out of Rutgers. I mean, that's possible, Don. That's maybe the biggest game marked on the schedule preseason for Rutgers, that in Michigan, certainly.
There's no doubt that game took a toll on them, at least from an emotional standpoint. They played them so well for a long time. As you know, they had a 9-7 lead in the third quarter. The 93-yard interception return was the play of the game. If you're a Rutgers fan, you would argue that was targeting. And of course, if that would have been flagged as targeting or pass interference, that would have certainly given us a different outcome than what we had. I'm not saying Ohio State wouldn't have still gone on to win the game, but it would have been a tighter game, obviously.
All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got Michigan fan Leo.
Hey, guys.
Leo, how critical are you going to be in your comments earlier?
Well, look, it's Veterans Day. I'm a 20-year Navy guy, so I'm happy today, right? I'm not going to – I understand this is Hawkeye the Storm. This isn't the Michigan podcast, Lockdown Wolverines. I know where I'm calling. So we're going to be respectful to the the naive young lady who called before.
You can rip me.
We're going to be very respectful to her. But congratulations today, man. 400 yards.
Appreciate that.
Haven't seen that in a while, huh?
I have not since 2021.
So, quick question. How big of a boy is Deacon?
He's about 260, isn't he? Don, is that where he's listed?
Oh, I was about to say, he reminds me like a little Ben Roethlisberger, maybe because it's the colors or something. But, you know, because you're running these big sets, and today you were the stretch plays. Now, a couple years ago when you played Michigan in the Big Ten championships, one of the runs that you were having success was that stretch run to the outside. And I saw that again today. For some reason, they like running the big set. They don't. It's not a lot of spread. There's not a lot of, you know. But number 3 looked good. Boy, where's he been? That dude is fast.
I don't know. I don't know why it's taken them so long. It took an injury to Deontay Vines to really get him going. I know he had one catch, first career catch at Iowa last week against Northwestern that set him up and put him in field goal range. But yeah, I'm not sure why it's taken so long. That's a great question for Kirk. I'm sure Kirk would just respond, say, hey, he's been maturing. He wasn't ready, and he's got a lot of talent, but it was raw. I don't know that I buy that totally, but I that's what he's going to say. We're not there in practice every day.
Right. And still didn't get to 25 points, but hey, 400 yards is an improvement, and the defense looked great as always. But let me get this out the way, Cory. I know you don't like Harbaugh. That's fine. We love him. I guess he's got to be your cup of tea now. But I will say this. I'm pretty sure that guy who I don't know how he got into our program, because for my entire life, our program was one of the bright lights of college football about doing things the right way and working hard and not cheating, right? So this is ticking me off to no end. I don't know how it happened, but I will say this. Pretty sure Coach Harbaugh didn't have him at San Diego State. Pretty sure he didn't have him in Stanford. I'm pretty sure he didn't have him in the NFL when he went to the Niners, right? And I'm pretty sure we're 1 win away from 1,000 wins for the program. So if you think that our talent, if you look at the talent on the roster for the last few years, it's vastly different. And Coach Patterson, we talked about last time when the university let go of Lloyd Carr because he was struggling with Ohio State, and man, did that cost us for years. We became a circus.
I knew Lloyd Carr very well. Lloyd Carr is one of the finest coaches I've ever known.
Oh, we loved him, and we loved
I
him.
hated to see that happen to him. He deserved better.
And Coach, not only that, there was such a culture destructor for us because we were in a bad culture for years. Harbaugh came into that. We turned it around. Cade helped, and Eric all helped, and we got some people in. Well, we got some elite runners. We got some elite lines. We got an NFL quarterback now, which we hadn't had in forever. So I'm pretty sure the wins today that we got today, that's how you go up to Happy Valley and slap some kitties around y'all, right? So I hope you guys don't see us at the end of the year.
Well, all I have to say is, regardless of how what's-his-face made it into the program, that apparently happened on the head man's watch. Correct?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. He's the head of the program. Now, I don't even know if Jim knows him, but he is the head of the program, like you said. And what drives me nuts is we've been having issues with Weiss, and whatever's going on with his situation may not be program related, but there was something weird going on there. And you got to know who your personnel is, and I don't know who's in charge of that, but they need to clean that up. We can't have that in our program. I mean, because to see my program, who's always been the light of football to me, become the dark horse of football is crazy right now. You know? And
my big thing is accountability. I mean, this obviously you talk about integrity and the ethical side of all this, and you're obviously a proponent for playing clean and playing by the rules. I just, if this was done on his watch, which it appears that it was, I understand why the Big Ten would suspend him right now. You're in the middle of a season. I mean, it would be such a weird situation if you just allowed him to continue to coach, given how strong these allegations are. Don, I mean, were you surprised? Do you agree with the decision to put him on the sidelines? I know that's been a controversial issue, and it sounds like it's going to become a legal issue for the Big Ten, but just your thoughts on the situation. I really do think this is probably going to culminate, and I could be totally off. Leo, you may tell me I'm wrong. I think this is going to culminate with Jim Harbaugh just leaving at the end of the year. I'm guessing he goes back to the league, because this has been a lot of drama that, he'd probably say, I don't need this. Let me go back to the league, put all this behind me, and don't got to deal with recruiting. He's had interest. Obviously, he's been interested in the league in recent years anyways, because he interviewed Minnesota a couple of years back. Just your thoughts on the situation, Don.
Well, John's certainly done okay. He's got a lot of job security, I think, with the Ravens. It does appear that the commissioner has heard from a lot of Big Ten coaches, and I think one of the reasons he did what he did is because of the interaction he'd had with the Big Ten coaches I don't know which coaches might have felt most strongly about it, but certainly there are any number of coaches that felt strongly that this needs to be a significant penalty because this is documented that it's certainly in violation of the rules with what's happened. So I think one reason the commissioner did what he did is because he was emboldened by the feedback he got from maybe ADs and coaches. I do not know. I don't know that. But I've certainly heard about some coaches were very outspoken about the whole process. I don't know that any ADs have said a word, but I do know some coaches, it's gotten back to the media that certain coaches felt really strongly about what happened. And who knows exactly what the proof might be, but it does sound like it can be documented that these things all happened. It appeared to be organized and widespread. If Purdue was being scouted based on Purdue's up and down past, if Purdue was being scouted, it's not hard to imagine. I guess the record would show maybe all Big Ten teams were scouted. I don't know. But as I understand it, there is printed information that details exactly how the scouting all took place, and that's pretty incriminating. And I realize that still doesn't guarantee that Coach Harbaugh knew anything about it. I don't know that he did or not. It's kind of hard to imagine that those kind of things would be happening within a program, but it's conceivable that he doesn't know. So I don't know what Coach Harbaugh knows and doesn't know, but it's a embarrassment for the conference. I'll say that. And it's unfortunate. The crazy part of it all is it hard to imagine that Michigan might not be unbeaten regardless of all this information that's supposedly been gathered. It's not hard to imagine they'd still be unbeaten. Yeah. So that's why it's unfortunate that they've been put in the spot they're in.
So, guys, so maybe you can help me clear something up with it. And that's just my ignorance here. It's not because I think the bullet statement they said was like the NC said sign stealing is not illegal, but I guess the method of what happened is what's illegal, is what they're saying.
Right. Yeah. Signals were captured on camera or on phone. And then if you do that, of course, you can go back and marry up with the video. You can marry up which signals mean certain things. They've asked me as a former offensive coordinator, give us an idea, Coach, of how that would be helpful. And the simplest example I could cite would be, imagine there's a certain set of signals that relate to an all-out blitz. And maybe they don't use that blitz very often at all. They do a great job in disguising that blitz. And so if you know what that signal is, and you can have early warning that here comes the blitz, now you can call the perfect play to take advantage of that blitz situation that they're about to give you. So that's the simple example of knowing one particular call could affect the outcome of the game, because if you hit the blitz in the head with the ideal call, then obviously it could affect the outcome of the game.
Right. Okay. And
Leo,
tell Mark Rogers, I get it, but I guess he can use that excuse when they get their tail kicks in 2 weeks.
Sounds good, Leo. I'll tell him. I'll let him know. I think he's listening right now, so I'll let him know.
I'll be on his channel too. I'll see you, Mark.
Okay. Thanks,
Take
Leo.
care, Leo.
All right. Appreciate it, Leo. Humble Michigan fan.
Mark has a response already. Bottom line, don't cheat.
He says, bottom line, don't cheat. So that's Mark Rogers, the voice of college football there. We're going to have to kind of speed up our calls a little bit. We've got James, we've got Austin, we've got Cory. We've also got our phone line. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line? Hello? Hello, you're on the air. You're on the air. Hello? You think anybody's on the other side of this line, Don, or should I cut it?
Apparently not.
Okay. Well, if they're just, maybe they're just, you know what it might be, Don? They realize they finally get a chance to talk to you and they're just stunned. They're just, Or like our
Yeah.
caller earlier, I hope there's no medical emergency going on. Last chance. Caller, are you with us? Okay, I have to let the caller slide. Let's go to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, who's on the line.
Me?
Hey, yes.
Can you hear me?
I got you.
This is Brian down in Arkansas.
Hey there, Brian. How are you?
I got a couple comments. Well, no, actually, yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm here.
We're gonna play this game. Brian, can I get you to turn your radio down, or
I don't have a radio on,
or your phone, or your computer, or whatever? I think
this
maybe
is
we're.
Brian down in Arkansas. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
All right. This is Brian down in Arkansas. I've called before. I watch you all the time on the YouTube there.
Hey, appreciate that, Brian.
Got a couple comments and a question.
Okay.
I'm gonna put Don on the hot seat to start it off with this Michigan thing, and I'm gonna end it just with one question. Hasn't play stealing been a part of football forever?
There's nothing wrong with eyeballing the bench that's across the field from you and trying to pick up any kind of communication they have with players on the field as the game is played out. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's precisely why people typically have more than one signal man. You know, one signal's live, one's dummy. You saw any number of Rutgers players, or I guess they were players, Rutgers coaches or players dressed in different outfits, 4 different colors.
Right.
I found myself wondering today, are you only live maybe for one quarter to the next? In other words, do you have 4 signal people because each one's live at a different time in the game? I don't know. It's not really worth it. Go ahead.
That's the reason the pro coaches hold their cards up over their mouth when they're talking.
Well, to begin with, what would solve a lot of our problems is if the quarterback had access to what the coaches on the sideline are saying, to go the NFL route.
Right.
Maybe that's going to happen going forward. That'd be one way to counter anything like this ever happening. It's simply for the.
That was my other question. Why don't they go to headphones and the helmets?
Right.
And that way that would solve all this. But another thing I had too is that lady that called earlier about the comment about Rutgers.
Yes.
If she wants to clarify that comment, just tell her to tell that person, whoever she was talking to watch the post-game interview with the Rutgers coach, because he sure in the heck didn't think they took a crap or whatever you want to call it.
That's correct. He gave all the credit to Iowa.
Yeah, he gave all the credit to Iowa, and he said, hey, they outplayed us, they outcoached us, and that's just the way it is, I mean,
I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano.
weren't.
I have a lot of respect for Greg Schiano. I know he didn't work out in the league, and there was some controversy with his time in Tampa Bay, but I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a really good coach, and he's made that program respectable. So I respect that out of him, and I would expect nothing less out of Schiano.
Yeah, I mean, so that for that person to make that kind of comments, I agree with her. It's just stupid. It's just absolutely stupid. The only one last question I have: do you think? I'm just kind of pulling one here, but do you think at halftime, Brian went to, because they always said that Kurt is actually the one that's running the offense. We've heard it time after time after time that nothing happens unless Kurt approves it.
Well, that's
Do you think
that's what the fans say. We've never heard that
that's
from
what the fans say?
the
No,
coaches.
that's what the
Yeah.
fans say. Do you think that Brian went to Kurt at halftime and said, "Look, I'm gonna be leaving here at the end of the season. Let me open up the offense. Let me try some things and see how they work." And they came out in the second half and they worked.
I don't think that happened.
No.
You
Truthfully, our approach in the first half was very much the same as it was in the second half. We did a good job of keeping off balance even in the first and second quarters.
Because it seemed like the offense opened it up in the second half. I mean, they opened it up.
Well, frankly, in the first half, we did too.
They just had they had the red zone interception and they had the missed field goal.
Right.
And,
right.
It's not like they scored 50 points. They scored 22 points. I mean, you
Hey, wait a minute, Cory. 22 points is like 50 the way we've been playing.
I know. You're right. You're absolutely right. And 400 total yards tells I think, even bigger story.
Yeah. So I just thought the second half, they really opened things up. They let them throw the ball. They opened things up. They set up the pass with the running plays. I'm not jumping up and down and saying Hill should be our starting quarterback, but at the same time, they really opened it up, I thought.
Well, let's hope that continues next week.
I tell you what, the way Illinois played today, we're going to need to.
Yeah. Yep. Illinois is going to be a challenge. And Brett Bielema is going to have his guys ready to play against his alma mater next week.
There's no doubt about it. Well, that's all I had, guys. I appreciate the show. And Cory, I think maybe if you grow a mustache with the black cowboy hat, a real young Burt Reynolds is what I'm thinking.
Don usually is coined Burt Reynolds. Wow. I'm a young Burt Reynolds.
I know,
Don.
but I think you can steal it from him if you just grow the mustache.
Well, all I have to say is giddy up.
My response to that is,
thank you, sir.
I believe Burt Reynolds has left us. I don't know if it's good that anybody's identified as being like Reynolds anymore.
Sling Ding 41, has Cade been taken over by Deacon for the preemptive starting position next year? No, and let me just say this. Cade should not be the preemptive starter. That should be an open competition with whoever is here, including Marco Linez. Just want to say that. Jake says, I just got here. What's up with the cowboy hat, Dion? Well, our caller, Erica, challenged Don to a cowboy hat. He refused to put one on. We're going to have to see if Lisa will. Maybe we can send one to your doorstep, Don. And I know you don't want to mess up your hair. In fact, Lisa, thank you for the compliment. She says, Cory, you look great in a cowboy hat. Don would look great, too. So there you go, Don.
I don't know if I could pull it off, Cory. You wear it really well, but I'm not sure I could pull it off.
Spurs and a cowboy hat. Okay, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We have got James on hold. James, welcome.
How you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
It's good. I just got home like an hour ago, so I kind of been behind. So I might have missed something that was already said. So,
good.
But first off, I have a question for Don because I was hearing people at the game ask this question. I didn't know the answer. So when you're a rugby punter, right, and you're running and somebody runs into you, is that still running into the punter? Because like Hilson almost ran into him, but he ran right to Hilson, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like if you're a rugby punter, because he's running towards to kick the punt, right? And he almost literally ran right into somebody like on one of the last punts, and they were like, what would that be called? Because he literally almost ran
bottom
into
line. If you get ball, if you're able to block the punt in any way, shape, or form, get your hand or body part on the ball, then you cannot rough the punter at that point, right? You gotta get ball.
What if he gets to off, but then he runs into you, and then then what happens after that? Because he's still running in momentum.
Well, if he initiated, I would assume if the punter initiated, if the referees, if they determine that he initiated the contact, my guess is they're not going to call anything.
Yeah, it's a good question. If, in other words, he makes an effort to block the punt, he doesn't get there, he's moving toward the punter. but at the same time, the punter's moving toward him. This much I do recall. Once you leave the pocket, you lose protection. So I don't know how they would enforce it, but with the way the Rutgers punter was operating, I don't know how they interpret it. Is he outside the tackle box? I don't know, but I do know that if the punter leaves the pocket, if you will, of course he's 15 yards deep. If he makes a move to the outside of the field, he loses his protection. So I think, as Cory suggested, if there is contact made and yet no contact with the ball, if the punter is moving toward the defender, the rusher, then I think there would be no foul at all. I think that's correct.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought it was too. I was just checking to make sure because I was 100% sure on the rule. Like, because I was like, if you're running out of the pocket, like sometimes it's kind of hard to stop your momentum when somebody's running right towards you.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to say is it's good to see Caleb Brown getting used the way he did. I feel like he was getting obviously used more than he has been, and I think that kind of helped open up the offense a little bit more because you have another weapon you need to add. But I also felt like Deacon looked not really good. Obviously, he made the one bad pick in the like the whatever, what was it, 4-yard line, 3-yard line, whatever it was.
Deacon was at least an FBS level quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. He was better than he's been. And the run game was there at times. What I mean by at times is like they'd break off like a run, but then it seems like they would get stuffed like the next three, and then they break off a little bit like a 5-yard run and they get stuffed again. Like it was like kind of like a little spotty where it's like they would get a good run and they would go not that good for the next couple and then get a good run. What I mean? It kind of was that way, but it was better than what it's been. So.
Yep. No, you're right. James, are you going to call in tomorrow for the women's post-game show?
We got basketball practice tomorrow night, so I don't know what time.
Priorities, my good man.
The game
Priorities.
gets over. I mean, I got a job to do, so.
Don't forget, this show takes priority in your life. All right, so
I got a job to do though, so
job takes back seat, as does the woman. This show should always take priority. Just don't forget that, and you make sure you let your lady friend know the same thing.
For sure. But what was your thoughts on the game, Cory? Since I didn't hear your thoughts like earlier because I was driving.
My thoughts are that Deacon, like I said, played much better. Played like what you would expect out of an FBS level quarterback with FBS level weapons and an FBS level line. He was not Joe Montana, but he was adequate. That's all they need. They need adequacy from their line, from their quarterback, from their backs, from their receivers. That's what they got. They finally got adequacy from everyone. They got really good play out of the tight ends in spite of the fact that they're really thin now at tight end. Credit the tight end development for that. And, of course, the defense was just rock solid. They should be winning more games, 22-0 or 22-7, 28-7. These are the scores. If I was ever going to be a nationally relevant team, they're going to be winning games something like 20-3. 30-6. Like these are going to be the scores. We're not 10-7. They're not winning the national title or competing in the national scale, playing in the single digits. So this was a complete performance and the first one we've seen in a long time.
For sure. And I feel like he looked good. He made a couple overthrows here and there, but like the Ortworth throw was a big throw. Like that was a big play too. Because like the minute he got open, we were all like, "Bro, he's wide open. Just hit him." Because I think in our heads we're all afraid he's gonna overthrow that. Because like he had some open receivers early in the year, where he would have them open, he would just overthrow them. Just launch it halfway over their head. So it's like, and that when he passed out, it's kind of like, I don't want it to be overthrown just because he has that tendency to overthrow a little bit. So it kind of was scary a little bit, but it was a good catch.
Yeah,
probably the biggest catch of his career so far. Obviously, he's a freshman, so he probably have more going. But it's cool to see the true freshman get an opportunity and make the most of that opportunity as well.
Absolutely, sir.
All right, I'll talk to you later, and hopefully the women can pull it off tomorrow. And I'll try to see if I can get on the call before I have to leave. But I don't know what time I have to leave yet.
I had a call in for Iowa, UNI.
I should be able to. I'll probably be like one of the first. What time is it? 2, so I'll probably end at 4.
4 o'clock for the post game.
See, I'll probably be here for a bit.
Talk to you then, sir.
Talk to you later.
All right. Let's see. Erica in the super chat. Can Coach tell us another Hayden Fry story in honor of our win tonight? Let's save that to the end. Thank you for the super chat, Erica, and we'll come back to that. I want to acknowledge it. We'll get so think about a story, Don, for our final moments. We're going to have to kind of get through our callers here because we've got still people wanting to call in. I want to watch Iowa State BYU. I want to watch Iowa State BYU, and they're underway. So let's get to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. Before we do that, though, I want to make sure we acknowledge as we continue to recap Iowa and Rutgers. I want to make sure we acknowledge our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse, and their awesome snacking products, and certainly check out their full selection at iowasmokehouse.com. Tasting is believing with their beef jerky, their meat sticks, their salsas, ketchups, barbecue sauces, and more. Use the code Hawkeyes and pair this stuff, folks, with your favorite bourbon, your favorite beer, whatever the case is, maybe just a soda. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We will go to Austin, who's been on hold. Austin, welcome to the show. Austin, welcome to the show. Okay, Austin's not here either. You think people just fall asleep waiting so long since we go like 2 to 3 hours, Don? You think people just fall asleep eventually and that's what's going on?
Maybe.
We cannot hear you, Austin. So I see you in the chat. We cannot hear you. Yes, your mic is not working. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line with Cory. We'll try to get Austin back. Let me know, Austin, if you get it fixed. Cory, welcome to the show.
All right. Am I live?
You're live.
Okay, awesome.
As live as you're going to be.
Yeah, I'm back. I drove from Michigan, brought my youngest son. He's, since seeing Cooper DeJean a couple weeks ago, he's decided he wants to play football. He had shown no interest in football. And after the impact that Cooper DeJean, or impression that Cooper DeJean left on him, he's now officially brainwashed, and he's also a Hawkeye junkie. He's smiling over there. But I'm back at my hotel room in Moline and ready to trek it back to Michigan tomorrow morning. But I'm very grateful. I felt like we had one tall order to try to – I thought that Rutgers would – Wimsat would run all over us, and I thought that running back would run all over us. And when we went in and the ball wasn't bouncing our way, we missed that field goal. And then we throw that pick, and it's 3-0. I just had a really bad feeling like we're going to lose like 13-6. And I'm just really grateful. And I guess, Don, I would like to ask this question. Showing not being so quick to move away from a quarterback that's struggling, and showing a little bit of patience with a struggling quarterback. Which have you noticed works better over time, to stick with your guy even when he's struggling, or to make a switch? Does it cause irreparable damage to the confidence of that quarterback that's struggling if you move away from him? What would you say is the more times than not most beneficial and I know every circumstance is unique, but when is the right time to move away? It seems like in this specific instance, it seems as though maybe Kirk's patience with Deacon perhaps will pay off, or it's one game. It's a couple games. But
no, it's one game, Cory. It's one game.
Yeah, I mean,
we have not seen even a glimmer of breath and life from the quarterback position since Cade McNamara went down.
With the exception of, at least he made a drive to get us in field goal range last week.
Okay, yeah, it was like two throws, but
well, right, but it wasn't a pick like the previous weeks, to end the game. So I guess my question is this, Don. I mean, what have you seen of all the quarterbacks that you've gone through and seen struggle, and you've stuck with them? How many have recovered versus how many have not? How many have improved, versus, when is it time to make a move to that next quarterback? Is it so many losses? Is it so many ineffective
That's
games?
a good question. I'll share with you something I shared with Cory. Cory, I'm going to go ahead and share it on the airwaves now too, referencing last week's game. Do you remember we ran the 8th naked of the day, however many we ran, except after a while Northwestern decided, you know what, we better play naked. So they did. And now there's a guy up in his face, and now Deacon is thinking, I can still get the ball off the field. We're going to be okay. I'll throw it away. Well, it was a dying quail. It wasn't anywhere near the boundary. And we are so fortunate that ball was not returned. It would have been intercepted on about the plus 30-yard line. I'm talking about their 30-yard line going in. And if the guy fell down with the ball, they'd have a short field. It's entirely possible he might have run it back for a touchdown even, because there weren't very many tacklers available. The comment I made to Cory, and Cory, you remember me saying it to you after we got off the air. I said, Coach Fry, if he was on our sideline last Saturday in Evanston, and he had put up with Deacon up until that point in the game, he would have had a 3-word response to what just happened. He would have simply said, get him out. He's done. He would have taken him out, I will promise you. That's exactly what I would have done at Western Illinois too. If I had seen what I had seen that day, and it had been followed up with that ball thrown out in space and should have been intercepted, that would have been enough for me. Let's not forget, there was also a strip sack. Now, thankfully, we recovered it. I thought Deacon recovered it. I think the play-by-play said that Richmond recovered it. The TV replay really didn't indicate which player did. But anyway, we were lucky enough to recover that one versus the 2 that happened against Minnesota. So the bottom line, you got to learn from your mistakes. You got to demonstrate better judgment than that. It's not realistic. If the guy has you in the grasp, it's not going to be easy for you to get the ball off the field. And for that matter, even if you do, they might flag you for being in the pocket, and that's a penalty too. So, sometimes you just have to eat the ball. And that's one of those cases in which he should have. Now, I realize he hadn't had a lot of experience, so I've been kind of careful to be too critical of Deacon, because he's trying to learn as quickly as he can. He simply hadn't played a lot of college football yet. But the bottom line, we played game 10 today. So, he's been the backup quarterback ever since August. So you have to learn from your snaps and also learn from the starter snaps. So you're taking mental reps even when you're not going. You're learning from Cade while Cade's healthy. And the bottom line is that learning process hadn't happened fast enough for John Hayden Fry, I'll promise you, because Coach Fry would have said, if I were the quarterback coach, he would have said, I've seen enough, get him out. That's what he would have said. I'm confident in saying that because I worked for the man for 21 years. So to answer your question, sometimes leaving a guy in there and showing that you have a lot of confidence, maybe he'll work his way through it. But in the process, he might get time or two. Let's face it, the loss of those games that Deacon played in were not for a monumental effort on defense. So we stuck with him. Kirk has shown a lot of patience to stay with him. And now today it appeared to pay off. I hope so. It certainly paid off today.
But again, I want to make what you just said, Don, has been the case for 3 years. Iowa has won a lot of games in spite of quarterback play for years now. And so it's true. Not just – so we talk about, well, patience. Patience never seemed to really pay off. Now, maybe some people would stake the claim that patience paid off with Spencer Petras because they had no better option to turn to. But I agree with you, Don, and my opinion on potentially playing Marco Lainez at some point does not change based on one good performance against Rutgers. I've never been an advocate for benching Deacon Hill, but I'm an advocate for playing multiple quarterbacks, and that's something that you deployed and that Coach Hayden Fry deployed at Iowa.
Correct. We did. Think of it this way. If a running back coughs the ball up, if Liddell Betts pulls him out of the game, are they surprised by that? Not at all. But does that mean that Liddell will not give him another opportunity as the game plays out? Well, if he doesn't, he certainly give him an opportunity in the next game, provided they don't cough the ball up in practice. But that's, today that was a ball that absolutely shouldn't have been thrown at the end of the half. It's a chip shot field goal. Let's face it, 6-0 is a lot different than 3-0 the way we play defense. Really, if you're up 3-0, then you can't help but feel if you're ahead by 3, that's really the equivalent of being ahead by 6 with our defense. If you're ahead by 7, you feel like you're ahead by 14. The bad news, the way we struggle on offense, if we're down by 7, it feels like we're down by 14 because we know that's a big hill to climb for us because we struggle to make points. Hope that makes sense.
And along the lines of that, excuse me, I'm drinking my Swarm beer and I'm getting a bit dehydrated. I got reloaded because I can't get this in Michigan, so I had to reload at Hy-Vee. But along the lines of that interception at the end of the half, to me it seemed as though the ball was tipped. My question to you, Don, again, is not to bypass Cory, but we have the luxury of a wealth of knowledge here from a coaching standpoint. Do you see more tipped balls from quarterbacks that throw these lasers that are not arching touch passes at times? Does that create the likelihood of more tipped balls? Because if you're throwing the ball on a line, you can't arch it over a defender. Does that leave you prone to the tipped ball more often?
Yeah, I think a lot of quarterbacks would tell you balls are not often thrown over the outstretched hand of a rushing lineman. They're more often thrown between linemen than they are over linemen. And part of the burden, I would argue, should be placed on the offensive line. If you've stymied your pass rusher and you have an idea when you won the battle, right, for that particular play, let's face it, if the ball comes out in 3 seconds and you stymied him for the first 2.5 seconds and he's still nowhere near where you know the quarterback is, you should expect him to gather himself and try to jump, right? Because he's not going to get to the quarterback. Well, if he can't get to the quarterback, he should gather himself and try to time up his legs so that he can get a hand on the ball. You should anticipate that, and at that point in time, if he does jump, you should hit him right in the stomach with your helmet. That'll get his attention. He'll be thinking twice about doing it later if you strike him in the stomach while he's in a vulnerable position when he's jumping. So the point is, if he gathers himself, attack him. Don't just sit there and feel like you won the battle, because if he's jumping, then that's on you too. You need to keep contact with him so that he doesn't have a chance to jump.
Yeah, and also, I guess, excuse me, but with respect to Deacon, it just seems like he's really staring down his receivers an extended period of time and really giving them a nice telegram as to where it's going so they can predict it a little bit.
There's some truth to what you say. A more experienced quarterback, and Deacon will gain that experience, he'll understand that he can use his eyes to influence where defenders play. He can look them the direction he wants to look them and then throw another direction. You're exactly right.
And I don't want to hog up all the time. I'm going to jump to one more subject, revisit, because I live in Michigan. I'm in enemy territory. Actually, most Michigan fans are pretty fond of Kirk Ferentz up there. They got a lot of respect for him. But with respect to any disciplinary action towards the University of Michigan, you want something that's proportionate to the crime. To me, how much real impact is there for a head coach to be out 3 games? You have all your coordinators, you have all the X's and O's are likely not going to change. If he's there at practice, what is the real cost of not having the coach there I mean, there's some fourth down decisions, there's some key decisions, but how much of a hit are they really taking for the potential significance of a loss of integrity to the Big Ten Conference to some degree? Do you feel as though the head coach not being present at the games is proportionate to the crime? To me, they don't really miss him. And I hear a lot of fans talking about it, that it's not going to hurt them. What would be your take on that as far as the punishment fitting the crime? And it's not fully investigated yet, but how much impact is that head coach really going to have? Are they really being hit that hard, or is it kind of just a figurehead that's not in place? And anyway, I'll let you talk.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Corey. Appreciate that.
That is a good question. I do think that Michigan is a very, very experienced football team. Their starters have played a lot of games in Georgia, and of course they still have their coordinators there. They still have their position coaches there. Coach Harbaugh still puts his stamp on the game plan preparation because he's there during the week. I have no doubt, just observing him during the games themselves, I have no doubt that he's very involved, especially I think with the offense. It's hard to be on both fields at once, of course. I think he has a bigger effect on their offensive plan than he does their defensive plan. But clearly, he's got people on defense that he can trust. So I think that brings up a good point. I don't think his absence on Saturday is a huge detriment to Michigan just because they have such an experienced football team. And clearly their coordinators know what they're doing. So I can see where he's coming from. You know, Coach Harbaugh still is very involved with the planning, and then he simply turns it over to the coaches and players to carry out the plan. Head coaches do make those tough decisions. Do we kick a field goal or do we go for 4th and 1? You know, do we take advantage of a waste down or not? You know, you might hear, Cory, as you've heard me discuss, head coach might tell the play caller if it was 2nd and 2 on the plus 40-yard line, he might even say when it's 2nd and 2, take a shot. He might tell him to do that because maybe the play caller would be a little bit nervous about making that call. Certainly Hayden Fry would call play action on 2nd and 2 some, and so would I, but that's not something we do at Iowa very often at all. But I don't doubt that Coach Harbaugh might say on 2nd and 2, take a shot, at which point he's not telling them what play to run. He's simply telling them, I want to play action pass.
Yeah.
So the same thing on 3rd down. Maybe he's already made up his mind that we're going to go for it on 4th down. And all he has to say is, you've got 4th down. That's all the play caller needs to hear. Now he knows 3rd down and 2. I've got 2 downs to make 2 yards, but we're down by 2 scores. So when the head coach tells me you've got 4th down, what he's really saying, without saying it, is if you want to take a shot on 3rd and 2, have at it.
Correct.
So head coaches do make those kind of decisions so often. Coach is not on the sideline, of course, he will make that decision. I guess it's strictly a play callers that the offense and defense does.
We do need to kind of blitz through these. I'm going to miss the whole first half here, folks. So I'm sacrificing this for the post-game show. I'm going to miss the whole first half of Iowa State BYU. I've come to terms with that. It's 10-7 right now. Cyclones over the Cougars.
And my pledge to you, Cory, is my answers are going to be shorter.
Okay. So first of all, Brett wants to know, is there any way that the offense gets worse if they put Marco in? Well, if Deacon plays like he did today, sure, there's a chance, but he hasn't shown that prior. I don't think he had much to lose heading into this game, but a glimmer of hope at the quarterback position. And Lisa wants you to know, Don, that apparently Kirk mentioned they're getting Deacon into a conditioning program during the offseason. So that's
good to know.
Okay, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Austin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me this time?
I got you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to talk to you again. Few and far I get to call in, and I missed the first half of your show. We're getting ready for a cruise tomorrow, so
okay.
Great win. Did a little bit of looking into the Big Ten West stand, or I guess a little bit like into the standings. So we, as they said on or on TV, they said, we are guaranteed Big Ten West champions. I think that's kind of silly, but
the fact that we have a co-champion is the stupidest thing I think I've ever heard in my life. But go ahead.
The way I look at it, if you don't go to play for the Big Ten championship, you're not the Big Ten West champion.
Correct.
Just that simple. So we right now are the front at 5-2. Then Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Illinois are all at 3-4. So as long as we win one of our next two games, we are the Big Ten West champions.
Right.
Assuming, hypothetical worst thing in the world, we lose both of our games. Right. That would put us at the losing tiebreaker to Nebraska or Minnesota. Everyone else can win out. We don't care about anyone else's schedules. The only two that we don't want to win out if we lose out is Nebraska and Minnesota.
I'll tell you, this is a big game next Saturday because I do not want to go into Lincoln with the West title and a trip to Indy on the line.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scary proposition, especially if Nebraska is a team that's still involved in the race.
I will say I disagree for a small reason. Like I said,
you want to lose against Illinois?
No, I always want to win. I like the potential storyline here, right? If Nebraska plays again, or Nebraska next week plays against Wisconsin, if they win that game and then we lose to Illinois, right? That puts us potentially losing our two games and Nebraska being one game away. If we lose to Illinois and Nebraska wins versus Wisconsin, that makes Iowa versus Nebraska the Big Ten West championship game.
So
I just love that
you want
storyline.
that?
It's just such a fun storyline.
A stupid storyline is what it is.
It's like we get to
if they blow the West title as bad as the division is right now.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't have any interest in seeing a Black Friday game versus Iowa, Nebraska be the play-in game for battle for the Big Ten West. I have no interest in that, Austin.
Okay.
I would say this: our fan support is such. I would hope that the players might feel this way. We owe it to our fans to clinch next Saturday. Do it in front of them. That's what we owe to our fans. And then another thing I mentioned at a luncheon I did the other day, I said, I realize we can still represent maybe after losing another game, but we owe it to this great football conference, the Big Ten. We owe it to the conference to be a great representative of the West. And the only way to do that is to be 10-2. I said that before we played today, and I still feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
We need to win out because to be able to back into it is embarrassing. Let's be the best representative we can be. Let's be 10-2. We'll still be the underdog at 10-2. That's okay, because at that point, we will have done a good job of representing ourselves in the West. We might end up winning the conference championship. I'm sorry, the Western Division championship by 2 full games at that point.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I would love to see us win both. I'm a sucker for the like, oh, everything is on this play moment, but
we just need to go out and play a game like we did today. We need to play a game like we did at Wisconsin. I made the comment after the Wisconsin game. I said, if we show up and play with the same high energy and enthusiasm against Minnesota that we did against Wisconsin, we'll win against Minnesota. I don't think we got that done.
Absolutely.
So that's our challenge. We have to, if we can match next Saturday our effort and enthusiasm that we had today, we're going to be in fine shape. I think that'll be good enough to get us another win.
Absolutely. On that note, was there anything that you saw today that was I guess, the guiding point of us playing lights out tonight? What was different today versus Minnesota, other than we won and everything seemed to work better? Was there any defining thing that you saw?
I just think you see a very, very determined football team. You saw that last week too. We were not very good on offense last week, but let's not forget when they tied it up 7-7 and we only had 1:50 when they scored their touchdown, it meant we had to move the ball now. Otherwise, we're looking at overtime. And you could say we only moved it 35 yards or 37 yards, whatever it was. But when we had to move it, we moved it. We had to get it in field goal range. We did that. And I didn't think for a second that Drew was going to miss the kick. I knew he'd make it. He's still the best kicker in the Big Ten. I wouldn't trade him for anyone.
Yep. Austin, I'm going to cut you loose because it's 3 hours and 40 minutes in. So.
Yep, I get you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a good night.
You too. All right, let's go to our final caller of the day in our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, who's on the line.
Good evening, gentlemen. This is John.
Hi, John.
Hey, Coach Patterson, what was your favorite thing about coaching, your least favorite thing about coaching, and what advice would you give to somebody that wanted to get into coaching as a career?
I think my favorite thing about coaching, the beauty of coaching college football, or for that matter, you could certainly say the same about high school football. The guys you're working with are young men. They're not men. So you have a chance to have a profound impact on their lives. You're in a position in which you can mentor them, not just about football, but about how to be a responsible adult. You can help them to deal with their issues when they're college students. Let's face it, they're not nearly matured and grown. So you can help them and educate them and help them to make good choices and prepare them for later life. I think that's the greatest reward of all. It meant so much to me when I retired. A lot of players reached out to me that day and they said, in so many words, that fundamentally they said the same thing. They said, Coach, you made a difference in my life. I can't thank you enough. And that was all I needed to hear, because it's a real sacrifice to be a college football coach. You have to give a lot of time to it. And I felt like there were times when I didn't spend as much time with my own daughter as I wished I could. And we spent a lot of time together, but in the fall, let's face it, there's not a lot of free time. So only then did I know that all that hard work really did pay off, that we had guys that were successful in later life, in part because of what they learned as college football players. So that's the greatest reward, I think. Right now, I would say it would have to be this nightmare of a thing called transfer portal and NIL and just recruiting in general. I think it's unfortunate that we're at the point now where coaches can buy players and not have to worry about being penalized for it. I think the beauty of the game, I say it this way, even the NFL has a salary cap, right? So why in God's name, the beauty of college football all these years is that in theory, it was all a level playing field. Well, now it's no longer level. Some schools have a lot of money to put toward players and other schools not so much. And that's unfortunate because the NFL doesn't believe it's right. In theory, every team has the same payroll. And that all allows for more fair competition. That's one reason the NFL draws such good crowds, is because everybody has, in theory, an equal chance. In college football, that's not the case at this particular moment.
What advice would you give to somebody wanting to get into coaching?
Well, you better be sure you have a passion for the game. I think a lot of the best coaches demonstrated, even if they only played high school football, they had a real passion for the game. It's time consuming. There's a lot of ways, hours and an effort I put into my coaching career. I have no doubt that I would have made more money if I'd chosen the business route. I actually worked for a short period of time for American Express. I was in a public relations position for American Express, but I wasn't very fulfilled. I was making a really good salary. I just got out of the making good money, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I had a chance to pursue coaching, and I did. As Coach Fry said, I was really intrigued by a guy that would want to take a 90% pay cut to go to work for me. That's what I did. So I've never regretted doing it, because even as a plebe at West Point, one night we were talking about what we were going to be doing in 20 years. And I said that night at the age of 18, I think I'd like to be coaching college football. And 20 years later, I was doing it. And 47 years later, I was still doing it. And at the time, I was 65 years old. That was long enough. So I still love the game. I still spend any amount of time working on analytics. It's all designed just to help Iowa in the best way that I possibly can. And I do know that the coaches appreciate my help, and I'm gratified that they do.
Nick Jackson was on with Gary Dolphin tonight on the post game, and they asked him about Jay Higgins, and he said, "That's my best friend here. He's going to be in my wedding someday." I appreciate Jay Higgins' approach to the situation, where when they brought Nick Jackson in, that he didn't have a bad attitude. He said, "What are you doing recruiting over the top of me? I put my time in." He welcomed him, and it's so far it's turned out great for both of them.
They've been both stellar, and I think a big part of both of their maturation is the other person. I would say how they've worked off each other, and they live together. And yeah, no, I agree. I know you agree as well, Don.
I do. Here's one thing I've always said. Football's the last great democracy there is. And by that, I simply mean this. When I first meet with the players every year, I remind them it's not about them. It's not about any of them individually. It's not about me as their coach. It's not even about our head coach. It's all about the team. And I warn them, I promise you this, after a big win, a veteran coach in the locker room, he's looking around to see who's not happy, because that's a bad sign, because that is not a team player. Everyone should be happy in a locker room after a game. Doesn't matter what your role is. Doesn't matter if you even got on the field. Maybe your job is simply to be the best scout team player you can be. And when the defense plays well and you're an offensive scout, you feel a little bit of satisfaction that the defense could play so well, because part of their preparation involved how well you did your job. And that's the beauty of football. It's the ultimate team sport.
John, appreciate you calling in, sir. And please don't be a stranger to our basketball shows coming up.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay. So a brief scoreboard update for everybody. Texas and TCU doing battle with under a minute and a half to go. Longhorns lead 29-26 over on ABC. Also, LSU leading Florida right now, 45-35, late in the fourth quarter. How about Duke leading rival North Carolina late, 29-26, possible upset brewing in Chapel Hill. Oregon and USC just getting underway. The Ducks leading 7-0. Kansas falling earlier today. The 16th ranked Jayhawks falling to Texas Tech 16-13. Michigan over Penn State 24-15. Alabama over Kentucky 49-21. Tulane taking down Tulsa in a battle 24-22. Arizona squeaking by Coach Prime and the Buffs 34-31. Kansas State beating Baylor. Been a big, a lot of points scored. Let me just look real quick. I was curious to see what Keegan Johnson did in this game. I know he had a big game last week for the Wildcats, and this week for Kansas State. Keegan Johnson ended with just 31 yards, so 3 catches, 31 yards for Keegan, but his team scoring 59 points and beating Baylor. Florida State beating Miami 27-20, close one there. Number 5, Washington battles it out and beats the Utes of Utah 35-28. Missouri with the win over Tennessee. How about this score, Don? 36-7. How about this score? Oklahoma State's a weird team. They've got now 3 losses on the season, 1 to Iowa State, 1 to South Alabama, and now a 42-point loss to Central Florida. Just unbelievable what that Big 12 conference is right now. And this is coming from a Big Ten West fan. So Oregon State beating Stanford 62-17. Georgia over Ole Miss 52-17. Oklahoma over West Virginia 59-20. Ohio State over Michigan State 38-3. And of course, Louisville, the other top 25 team we didn't mention, beating Virginia on Thursday 31-24. And of course, Iowa with the 22-0 shutout against Rutgers. Iowa State right now and BYU doing battle in the Big 12 conference out in Provo. And as of right now, the score is 29-26. And toward the end of the first, excuse me, not 29-26. I'm looking at Texas. By the way, that game is final. The Longhorns do win 29-26. Iowa State now up 17-7. They just scored a touchdown. 17-7 right now with a minute left in the fourth quarter. Lonnie, appreciate the super chat. Go watch your game, Cory. Great work tonight. Thank you, Lonnie. Appreciate everybody being a part of this. And Erica wants one final story from you about Coach Hayden, John Hayden Fry. Don, what you got?
Oh my gosh, that's I've been too involved with answering questions to even think of a good story. Let me think for a minute.
How about you tell it? Can I interject here? Can you tell us a story about who was Iowa playing and Hayden? Was it Bo Schembechler made the comment about punting? I always love that story.
Yeah, sure. That's a good short story. Yeah, that was the infamous 1 versus 2 game, as I recall. So you can imagine, what a competitor Bo was. And I did hear from a good source. This is somebody that actually roomed with Shemmy in college. And Bo was retired, and this person got to know Bo as a result of being a roommate of his son. And Bo did say, he said, I hated Iowa, but at the same time, I had great respect for him because we never did figure out how to defend their offense. That was Bo's comment, and I have great respect for Bo. I think he's such a wonderful man and did a great job at Michigan, and I know that a lot of Michigan fans feel the same way toward Hayden. But anyway, tell me again, Cory, you brought it up and I can't remember what you said now.
The punt story.
Oh, the punt story, yeah. Yeah, so here they are. It's a big showdown game. CBS, that's back in the days when there was one mid-afternoon game on TV. That was a national game. Every TV in the country. It's back in the days before cable even, I guess. Anyway, we're warming up to punt. And I believe I'm going to tell it right, Cory. You tell me if I'm wrong. There was some backup punter, maybe, that was not punting very well, I think. Was that the case?
Right.
And Bo said, you're really thinking about using that guy to punt against us? And Hayden's response, without blinking an eye, he said, we're not planning on punting. And of course, Bo just laughed. But it was a good response. I remember talking about Bo and Hayden. Remember this, might have been the first time Bo showed up in Kinnick. And as you know, you've heard all about the pink locker room. I think maybe we beat him that first time. The next time Bo came to town, he had his managers use white butcher paper over the walls. No pink locker room because he covered the walls. When Hayden found out, he told Bo before the game, he said, I got you. And Bo said, what are you talking about? He said, you're worried about pink locker room. You're not focused on the game. I got you, Bo. And we beat him again, I do recall. So Hayden was a psychology major, and that even applied to how he interacted with his coaching competitors. Hayden was a great motivator, and I was able to tell Hayden the very first Christmas after he retired, and I was over the very first season after I had gone to Western Illinois, I called up Coach Fry on Christmas and I said, Merry Christmas, Coach. And oh, by the way, those stories you told at Iowa, I'm telling them at Western Illinois and they still work. And motivational stories. And I will admit on the drop of a hat, I can't remember all of them, but I remember them off and on from time to time. And I did use a lot of them. There's the exact same story that Hayden told at Iowa. If they work once, they'll work again. And I'm sure I'm not the only coach that used an old Hayden story either. I would imagine Bobby Stoops used a few of them in his years at OU too.
Appreciate the super chat, Erica. I want to give a final plug to RTI Threads. Support our sponsors. RTI Threads is proudly carrying the official merchandise and apparel of Hawkeye superstar Cooper DeJean at cd3lacesup.com. Shop it now. And of course, they also have lines from Aaron Graves, Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, etc. For all of that selection, go to rtithreads.com. You can find the link to Cooper's site in our description. Appreciate RTI Threads for being here. Again, Iowa defeating Rutgers 22-0. And I kind of ran through some stats earlier. I'll do that real quickly here as we finish up our post-game show almost 4 hours in, but figure with the offensive explosion, quote unquote, we were going to have a longer show. So I guess we can deal with that. Iowa State and the BYU just went to the end of the first quarter. So I'll get most of that game. Deacon Hill on the day, 20-31 in through the air with an interception, 223 yards for Deacon, and also had a touchdown, long of 54, pass to Zach Ortworth, a true freshman tight end. Addison Estringa had 8 catches on 8 targets, 47 yards. He is rock solid with those hands. Nico Ragaini, 11 targets, led all receivers in this game with 11 targets, 48 yards on 4 catches. Caleb Brown had 4 targets, 3 catches, 27 yards. LaShawn Williams, 2 catches for 24 yards. Zach Ortworth had the 54-yarder, his first career catch. Seth Anderson had 1 catch for 21 yards. Jazz Patterson, 1 catch for 2 yards. LaShawn Williams led Iowa rushers with 65 yards gained on, 63 net yards on 13 carries. 54 yards for Caleb Johnson on 10 carries. Jazz Patterson, 53 yards on 14 carries. Caleb Brown had 2 carries for 20 yards in the game as well. And mentioned some of the defensive players that stood out. As always, just really impressive play from Iowa's linebackers. Nick Jackson, Jay Higgins combined for 15 tackles and a sack. Logan Lee had 5 tackles. Jamari Harris, 3. Herkett, 3. Sebastian Castro, 3. Craig, 3. Wyatt Black, 2. Evans, 1. Aaron Graves, 1. Wampa, 1. Schulte, 1. Cooper DeJean did not register a tackle. He had 1 pass breakup. Pretty, I guess you could say, quiet day for Cooper DeJean. He kind of scared us all when he fielded a punt with a bevy of players around him, but that's what Cooper DeJean does. And that's good when you don't have to rely on your superstar to be Superman each and every week. So Iowa will now move to, they do move to 9-1 on the season. They'll take on Illinois next Saturday. Don, give us some final words, some parting shots about Brett Bielema's squad. How does Iowa avoid a home loss on Senior Day next Saturday inside Kinnick?
Well, the simple answer would be to match the effort and enthusiasm we had today. You know, I think we played an outstanding game. We played a complete game. Offense came through. Defense certainly played great football throughout the entire course of the game. The kicking game was solid. I know Drew's probably irritated that he missed one, but I don't worry about Drew missing. He's not going to miss many. You can bet on that.
Erica wants to end each post-game show with a Hayden story, so I'll do my best to do that. Everybody, thank you, folks. Appreciate everybody being here for almost, 4 hours. We've said before we're not going to do 4-hour shows, but then there's circumstances that seem to call for 4-hour shows, and then it happens, Don. I haven't eaten yet. I hope you get something to eat as well.
I had a bowl of soup before I started.
Soup is always the way to go. Okay, folks, we'll be back next week for Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson after Senior Day in Iowa City. Inside Kinnick should be a fun one. And we'll be talking with you, the caller, and Hawkeye fans alike across the globe next Saturday following Iowa and Illinois. Coach, appreciate you taking the time as always, sir, and we'll talk to you in a week.
My pleasure, Cory.
All right, folks, Iowa UNI women tomorrow. I'll have postgame coverage for you then, plus Iowa Creighton Tuesday. Lots going on and football coverage throughout the week. For Coach Don Patterson, I'm Cory Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Have a great night. We will talk to you soon.